Good evening. At this time, we'd like to call the February 13th meeting of the Caroline County Board of Supervisors to order. Mr. Thomas will lead us in an invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Let us pray. Dear Father God, we come before you in your name. Two or more have gathered, and as you said, you will be there with us. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. We ask that you guide us, direct us, so that we may do what's right for all the citizens of Caroline County. These and all blessings we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight at our meeting, we have Mr. Floyd Thomas, Jeff Black, Mr. Jeff Seeley, Mr. Clay Forehand, I'm Nancy Long, and Mr. Underwood is out of town with a business conflict tonight, and so he will not be joining us, and we wish him safe travel. At this time, are there any opening board comments? Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've just got a few. First of all, I wanted to thank the board and the county staff for their expressions of sympathy at the passing of my mother. I do appreciate all the thoughts, wishes, and prayers. I've got another one. I spoke to Mr. Schiebel regarding littering on Coolwater Drive, and I understand he has in the past worked with the sheriff to identify those who are leaving their entire trash bags out there, so we can identify them and make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. And lastly, I need to apologize to VDOT for the misunderstanding regarding the FAMPO representative statements last month regarding the 301-207 corridor improvements. I spoke to the resident engineer that handles Caroline, and it appears that we were misled by the FAMPO representative statements regarding who would pay for improvements on the 207-301 corridor. According to VDOT, the county will not have to make any payments. They can apply for smart scale applications like they always do. So in this case, I would suggest that the county continue to discuss the improvements with VDOT and ignore the misleading statements from FAMPO. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Black?
I just want to, first of all, thank the volunteers. On Saturday, there was an Adalta highway trash pickup along Ladysmith Road that went from Sassafras Shade Winery to the Route 1 corridor. There were 48 bags of trash picked up in a matter of 2.5 hours. I do want to thank Sheriff Lippa for the speed trailer, Major Mosier personally for coming out, protecting the people who picked up the trash. So thank you for all those who came out. Also, last weekend, or the weekend before last, I should say that, we had the polar bear plunge here in Caroline County. There were 9 organizations that were involved, churches, 501c3s, and people raised over $17,000 for that cause. So that was it's a really awesome event in Caroline. We hope that will continue to grow and raise even more money for the charities. The Catholic Church took home the Polar Cup, which is they raised over $4,000, and the gentleman director of the YMCA actually was the individual winner. He got the golden plunger for the individual with the highest total of money raised. Finally, I want to address something. And I had to actually write this out, and it was over the last few days I've received numerous calls and emails regarding a text amendment that was crafted to help Leashes of Valor become part of Caroline County. To those people who have reached out to us and to me, thank you. Normally there is little that local governments can do to help these heroes. I believe it was a mistake to reject this text amendment and not help those veterans who have given so much for our country. I urge this board to reconsider said rejection of the text amendment or figure out an alternative route to these veterans. Whether we call Leashes of Valor a therapeutic dog facility or a commercial dog facility or give it a use of some other name, we just need to call it here in Caroline County. Finally, I will be having a constituent meeting on February 27th at 7 o'clock. That will be at Rehoboth United Methodist Church. And then I will also be having one March 1st inside the Landor Clubhouse inside Lake Landor, and that is open to any county citizen. So thank you.
Mr. Seeley?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to address the text amendment. The text amendment for Leashes of Valor was for a therapeutic facility. The therapeutic facility would have changed the zoning in the entire county. For those that are here for that, there are other avenues to approach that, and I think they would be more appropriate than actually changing the zoning in the entire county. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Forehand?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a couple items. First, constituent meeting on February 27th, also within Lake Caroline. If individuals want to attend that, they may need to contact the organization to get in the gate. It is a gated community, and but I will be there the 27th at 7 p.m. Next, the boys basketball team is in the district finals tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at our brand new gym. Congratulations to them, having a great season so far. We're hoping to have a sellout tomorrow night. And then lastly, regarding the special text amendment that my colleagues mentioned, we have had a couple controversial issues up until this year, starting in December of last year regarding the mine. This item, the Arley development on Route 1, and we do get a fair number of correspondence from folks, and without doubt, the vast majority of them are pleasant. They have a point to make. They make their point. They're cordial. We received one in particular that got my attention that was the opposite of those things, and it's disappointing. I know it happens. It's politics. It is an issue that does draw a lot of emotion. But Ms. Long, to my left, was addressed in a way that was, to me, completely absurd, and questioned her integrity, her intelligence, her commitment to her patriotism, for lack of better things. And I take offense to that, and I think that's not really necessary to make your point. So I just wanted to express that, and Ms. Long, thank you for what you do and who you've raised, and your continued service on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a couple of announcements, too. I want to restate that we do support veterans here. However, we just did not feel that a therapeutic health center was what they had asked for. It was an idea that had come up with. It would put a lot of financial burden on this group that they did not need. It is my hope that we can find another way around, and we do want them here. I think a majority of the board does, but we need to do it in a way that's good for the whole county and not change one ordinance that would affect everybody for one group. There are more ways to get around this and make everyone happy. If someone wants to question my patriotism, bring it on. I've got a Marine Corps son. I have stood at the door when someone has knocked and caught my breath and dropped my heart more than once when he's been overseas. So I am all for this. I met Axel when he came for his first vet visit when he first got Jason. So you can make all the comments you want, but I will make decisions for this county because I love this county and for the whole of the people, and I can still be a patriot and make good decisions at the same time. And that's what we plan to move forward with on this committee. And we will represent everyone to the best of our ability. Now, moving on, I also want to thank the county in that I attended the chairman's forum this weekend, learned some new things about some changes in legislation, procedural changes, that type of thing. and I appreciate the county sending me there. Had a good time, met a lot of people, and appreciated that. I also want to thank Mr. Black for all his hard work on the polar plunge, and for Mr. Cully for being the man with the mic up there, and Bob Hebert and all the other people that helped out. It was cold out there, but it was fun, and I hope everybody next year can come and watch. We had a really good time, and it's a nice function. All right, so if there's no other comments, then we will move forward with the amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments or changes to the agenda tonight?
Madam Chair, we have proposed new business item 12A. We somehow missed this, getting this on the agenda. The schools lost a 2011 65-passenger bus in a fire. It was disabled by fire, and insurance has reimbursed the schools, but not enough to replace that bus, and so we'd like to discuss that, and how you would like to proceed to authorize them to replace that bus. So I'd like to add that to the agenda.
Let's put that down as 12A, if that's all right with everyone.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
I'm sure there'll be some discussion on this particular item, but I would suggest we put it on the consent agenda and have Mr. Cully explain it. I don't think we're going to turn down the proposed new bus. I don't think we're going to turn down the new bus.
Oh, so your idea is put it on consent agenda?
We might as well, and just let Mr. Cully explain whatever he needs to explain, and it'll make it a lot easier and quicker.
Does anyone have any objections to that? All right, let's move it to G on consent agenda then. Any other changes?
Madam, I believe we kept the early development hearing open until the,
Next month.
or so we skipped this?
We skip, right,
Okay.
next month.
March 13th.
Thank you.
Anything else? Do I have a motion to have the agenda accepted as amended?
I'll make the motion, we amend item G under the consent agenda and then accept the agenda as presented with one amendment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right, that brings us to presentations. Dr. Parker.
Good evening. Good evening. I think we're going to pull the PowerPoint up, and I will get started. At your desk, you should have a red folder that we brought with us this evening, and we'll refer to that as part of the presentation. And I'm wearing my red shirt in support of our boys basketball team and our division as we move on to the championships in basketball. If you haven't had a chance to get out to see them, I think it would be a great opportunity for you while they're still playing. Okay, we're up and running. I have the clicker. Make sure we're working there. Yes, we are. Okay, good. Good evening, Chairman Long, Vice Chairman Forehand, members of the board. It is my pleasure this evening to present to you the FY 2018-19 operating budget and CIP presentation. Last evening, our school board approved the proposed FY19 budget for next year, and today I will give some detail on that budget in this presentation. Included in your packet is a copy of the presentation itself. It does have some financials in that packet, and I promise we will get to the financials. What I would like to do is something a little different this evening and just share a little bit about our division and who we are and where we're headed, because that puts our budget in context. So this presentation will be broken down into three specific areas: who we are, what do we value and believe, and how do we move forward. And I promise you the financials are included in the presentation, but I think you'll enjoy at least hearing a little bit more about some of the great things happening in Caroline County. So we'll start with who we are. When I first arrived in Caroline County, I used to tell folks I was in Carolina, and they'd say, "How's North Carolina doing?" And I used to say, "No, actually," and I had to describe, we're in Northern Virginia. We're a rural school division in Northern Virginia, and we have 5 schools, roughly around 4,300 kids. A lot of folks they remember King's Dominion, they remember the state fair, and they remember Fredericksburg, but some have not been fortunate enough to visit us. But our school division has a mission, and that's to provide an innovative, collaborative, and engaging learning environment that promotes a community of lifelong learners. And as we'll talk about this evening, we're rapidly moving on with that mission, and we want that to define who Caroline County Public Schools is. In terms of some data, we are the largest employer in Caroline County. The next largest employer in the county is the county government. And we roughly have 696 full or part-time employees, with the county coming in at 339. Our on-time graduation rate has teetered around 88% over the last 3 years. Student population, as I mentioned, a little bit over 4,200, and we have 44% of our students earn advanced diplomas. And we have a very low dropout rate of 1.93%, which is fairly good compared to other divisions. Where we lay our hat is with providing students with enriching opportunities for not only academics, but also other areas, like culinary, fine arts, and other things. And I'm proud to just share a few of our students' accomplishments with you. At the top left, we have several students who participated in the Music in the Parks Festival at Busch Gardens, and the CMS Chorus won first place. In the Mixed Chorus Division, the band won second place, and the strings won first place in the orchestra division. The top middle are some of our Skills USA students. Justin San Nicholas won second place in the state in the engines competition and won a $7,500 prize. Devin Castle took third place and a $5,000 prize, and both students also received a set of Snap-on tools. And Victoria Holtzman, who was one of our fine students who graduated last year, and we do miss her, won second place in the states, and she also competed at the national level in career and technical education in Orlando in June. The top right, Bowling Green Elementary Beta students have proven that they have what it takes, and they continue to excel, having qualified again this year for nationals. And our high school students Beta program is doing very well also. Down in the lower portion of the slide, Aiden Hall received a Microsoft Office Master certification, and I can only tell you that is a very difficult certification to earn. And Isabella Perez was a student who was selected to the Virginia Leadership as the Virginia Leadership Ambassador. So our students are excelling in many areas, and we're very proud of their accomplishments. But our students are not the only ones excelling in the classroom. Pictured here are 3 of our teachers who were recently recognized for their excellence in the classroom. Ms. Sarah Gibson was named the state and national VFW Teacher of the Year, Veterans of Foreign Wars. And she's a middle school teacher, history teacher at CMS. Ms. Sarah Adamson Mayer, along with, was selected as not only the Caroline County Teacher of the Year, but also the Teacher of the Year for Region 3 in the state of Virginia. And she participated in the governor's inaugural parade in January, excuse me. And then the third picture there is Bowling Green Elementary teacher Jessica Pittman, who was the state and national agriculture teacher of the year. In telling our story, it would be incomplete without speaking about the much improved facilities and other overwhelming, and how we arrived at that with such overwhelming community support for improving our facilities and schools. We're very proud of the facilities and where we are right now in terms of bringing many of our 2 renovations that were accomplished this year, and we look forward to continuing that work of improving our facilities and classrooms. But where we lay our hat is on instruction. And we must say that our division has come a long way in ensuring that our classes offer a variety of activities. Pictured here are students participating in STEM-related activities, horticulture, technology-related activities using handheld devices, and other activities that involve students and engage them in the classroom in their regular curriculum. So what are our values as a school division, and what do we believe? Now, we just finished developing our Pathways 2022, which is our 5-year strategic plan, and that kind of outlined who we are. But we used the acronym, embedded in that strategic plan is an acronym, All Students Succeed. And we chose that because we could use that acronym to really key in on some of our key values and what we believe is important in moving our division forward. We believe that our schools should be safe, and we should do everything possible to improve safety for our students on a daily basis. We believe in unity and collaboration, both not only with students and in the classroom instructionally, but also with our teachers and our administrators. Citizenship is important to us, and also in terms of citizenship, community service. We believe in exploration, improving engagement, and obviously serving a diverse population and ensuring that we have a diverse workforce. Part of our decision making is to put kids first every day. And we do that because that keeps us grounded in what our values are, but also in how we act and respond and the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis. Difficult decisions become easy when you just keep it as simple as put kids first in your decision making every day. And we hope that every layer of our organization feels that way, whether it's the bus driver picking kids up, whether it's the cafeteria worker, whether it's the principal. We all want to make sure we ask ourselves, what's the best thing we can do for kids? So how do we move forward as a division? In terms of building our budget for this year, we took in a lot of information, and we did have some challenges. And I'll share some of the things that we're factoring in this year. One, we knew we just initiated a 5-year strategic plan, and we wanted to make sure, as we shared with the community, that we want to align all of our budget items and budget requests and priorities with that strategic plan. We wanted to assess our facilities and resources and see what resources do we have and what resources do we need in order to implement that strategic plan effectively. And then we also conducted a compensation study this year to determine how our employees stand in the regional market. And we'll share some information about that study in a moment. Other things, we put process. When we look at our budgeting process, we want to get plenty of input from not only the community, but also our division staff. And we've reached out to our staff this year to try to get more input, and we continue to keep them informed as we move through the budget process. Our school board workshops have been effective in helping us narrow down our priorities and aligning those priorities with the strategic plan, the 4 key goals of our strategic plan, which are included in this presentation. And then finally, thanks to our leadership here on the Board of Supervisors, we've increased the number of joint board meetings that we've had in 2-on-2s so that we can continue to collaborate with the county in order to make our budget work better for the school, for all of us. Our board primarily set key goals for developing budgets, and we've kind of tweaked these over the last few years, but here are the 4 key ones that we really stick to on a regular basis and we have regular conversation about. We want to align our budget priorities to our 5-year strategic plan, and that was the purpose of building a robust strategic plan, was to keep us aligned so that we could communicate the vision for the school division. We want to continue to assess and respond to the instructional, emotional, and social well-being of students by ensuring that resources are considered and added based on an expected impact on tangible and educational outcomes. We want to work with you, the county government, to develop a compensation benefits proposal that supports the CCPS competitive position for attracting, hiring, and retaining a competent and professional workforce. And then finally, we want to develop and maintain a responsive systemic approach to long-term building maintenance, construction, custodial services, in-school items like furniture, equipment, and technology, and other operating efficiencies that help us while maintaining financial stability. Other budget considerations this year, there are a lot of changes taking place at the federal and state level, as you guys know. ESSA, the Every Student Achieves Student Success Act, has a lot of requirements in there on schools and school divisions. Title I funding, the title funding in general, there are going to be changes on title funding and the level of funding that we'll receive from the federal government. At the state level, standards of accreditation, there have been changes there. And then this has been an anomaly year where we've had over 300 pieces of legislation go out, and some of that legislation, if passed, are unfunded mandates. So there may be some burden attached with some of the mandates that come through the state government as well. And changes to VRS. This year it's on the positive side, but we always want to continue to look at those type of changes and how they impact our state budget. Other things that we consider that you want to be aware of, there's a new computer science requirement. Just like history, science, math, and English, computer science is now a requirement in our schools. And students, and we'll have to be able to develop the curriculum, the courses, and everything for that. That didn't come with additional funding, but it is a requirement now. We are also under, there's a big interest in expanding career and technical education opportunities and internships across the state. These are driving factors and motivators not only under our strategic plan, but also in our budget. We have immersion, we have an interest in adding immersion programs in this next strategic plan. So we're going to eventually want to see increases in foreign language opportunities, technology, STEM education, and there's something called the 5 C's that the state is emphasizing that all schools add into their curriculum, and they're 21st century skills. And you may have heard of the 21st century skills. But incorporation of those 5 C's into our curriculum will be needed. Increasing school safety, security, and cleanliness, and then increasing school programs and response to student wellness concerns such as bullying, chronic absenteeism, and student retention. So all of those things are really have some budgetary impact, and we have to consider those when we're thinking about the long-term programs and opportunities and offerings that we provide in our school division. Now, this slide, just shifting hats and talk staffing for a second, because I think we've had some dialogue around staffing in the past, but I thought this slide would be interesting to you. The top slide represents our student enrollment from 2009 to 2018, and as you can see, we actually had a time frame where we were peaking, where we started to increase student enrollment after 2008, and we peaked at around 2014. But as you can tell from that slide, our 2018 numbers are very similar to our 2009 in terms of student enrollment. Not much of a difference, maybe a few students off of 2009. So relatively, you can say, with a bump, relatively flat. But when you look at staffing since that time, between 2008, really 2009 and 10, we lost over 50 positions. And that's a breakdown of what type of positions we actually downsized once when we had due to budgetary constraints around that time frame. Since that time, we've brought back at least 29 of those positions in those areas there listed there. And as you can see, we haven't brought back all the positions that we lost prior to 2009. But we've been doing more with the same or more students. So in some cases, when we talk about adding staff or support staff or instructional support, and there are those 8 paras, by the way, that you guys supported 2 years ago. Thank you very much for those under instructional support. When we talk about bringing staff back in certain areas, we want to be very strategic. We don't necessarily say we need to add 25 teachers because we lost 25 teachers. We need to say, okay, is there a need, or is there a new program, or is there some support staff that's needed to provide training, to provide resources in the classroom that may impact our budget in future years? When you look, and this information here is from a previous curriculum study we did, did recently, and one of the pages in the curriculum study talks about staffing and gives comparison to similar sized districts. When you look at our staffing in terms of overall staffing, administrative, teaching positions, teachers per 1,000 students, we are relatively low in terms of the number of teachers we have. And I think that's come up in conversations on sometimes as far as, well, why don't we go back and add a bunch of teachers where we may need them? We look at class sizes, and then we determine where we need to add staff. Our primary focus this year is middle school because we know we're seeing our numbers need to be reduced to class sizes in middle school, in particular in English. But we continue to look at our SOQ and make sure that we're making good adjustments in terms of teaching staffs, in terms of support staff, in terms of administration, and before we add positions to our school division. We are no way, shape, or form overstaffed, which is what I wanted you to see from this slide. Okay, so we do have some staffing requests in our estimate of needs to bring back some additional staff that will add supports to our classrooms and some of our support areas. The Code of Virginia requires that each superintendent prepare a budget reflective of the needs of the school division. Okay? It is the responsibility of the school board after that to balance the needs-based budget against the available resources. So with that, I'll turn over this portion of the presentation to Dr. Hellman to go over the proposed revenues and expenditures.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Chairman Long, Vice Chairman Forehand, board members, it's a pleasure to be here tonight to have the opportunity to present to you some of the financials regarding the 2019 Caroline County Public Schools budget for that period. This is a slide which shows the revenues by source. And it compares FY18 to the proposed FY19. Now, what I need to let you know a couple of things. Number one, all the numbers that you see here under the appropriations are from the governor's budget. The governor's budget, which was released December 18th. So if you're aware of the process, you know that once the governor releases his budget, the General Assembly then goes into session, and each house of the General Assembly crafts its own budget bill, and then at crossover, the House gives the Senate their version, the Senate gives the House their version. They select conferees and come together and hopefully agree on a final budget bill. So just for timing, I need to let you know, crossover occurs tomorrow. So we're presenting numbers to you that are somewhat very, very new. These are not finalized, I guess is the point that I'm trying to make. We see the state revenue has helped us out, an increase of about 2.28%. We got a token increase from federal. The federal grants and food services are relatively stable, and in order to balance the budget, we will be requesting a $1.3 million increase from the county contribution, going from $13.7 million to $15.1 million. This provides a graphical representation of the chart that you had just shown or have just seen. The larger lime green portion is state revenue, which is at about 55%. And then the other large slice of the pie at, I believe it's 32%, is identifying the county contribution. So again, just a graphical representation of the table that I just shared with you. So how will we spend the money? This is showing the money being spent by category. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Board of Supervisors appropriates to the school board on a categorical basis, and these are the categories that we would be looking at. You can see that we are at about close to 70% instruction, which is somewhat of an unwritten, and I don't want to use the word mandate, but oftentimes they want you to be, in that ballpark. Close to 70% needs to go to instruction. Administration, attendance, and health is only 3.23% of the entire $47 million budget. And you can see the rest of the figures yourself. But again, what's important here is that it's about a 4.35% increase in expenditures, as was in revenues. You see the decrease total is $1,980,815, which is directly related to the superintendent's estimate of needs. Again, a graphical representation just showing the various categories of where the money would be spent, with the largest portion of the pie, again, going to instruction.
So I'll pick back up with healthcare, because that was a great challenge for us this year in balancing this budget. And Mr. David Rowe, by the way, is with me, who is our healthcare consultant, who may, if there are any questions that the board may have tonight, he can assist with. But we had pretty much a significant increase in healthcare due to claims this year, and we were initially facing up almost a 30% increase. That was our initial information that was coming back from the actuaries. Working with David and the Anthem folks, we were able to get that increase down to 13%. Now, that still was a significant bump for us, roughly in the area of $700,000. So we had to put a plan in place, or found out a way to mitigate some of the cost. And looking at how we could manage that, we came up with a plan, basically to budget for $400,000 in this current budget. We want to mitigate some of the costs by two different ways. One is to revisit our employee share of the contribution for health care. And we don't want to put too much of a burden on employees, so the other way we're looking at that is to possibly put an offset using some of our Anthem escrow to put a one-time premium offset of the premium to mitigate some of the additional costs. We feel that by doing that, we still have enough money to set aside in case we continue to see a significant increase or a consistent increase in health care next year. We would still have options available. Now, getting into the other details of the budget. As we discussed, we aligned our budget priorities to our strategic plan, so they're broken up basically by the four goals of our strategic plan, and I think you've seen some of this information before, but for the sake of public information, I'll go back through some of the information one more time. We aligned our budget priorities with the four goals of our strategic plan, and we prioritized them high and moderate, or moderate and low. The low items were taken off the list, and we took a good look at the items that aligned with the strategic plan, and we incorporated those into our estimate of needs. In the areas of teaching and learning, our primary needs are either to add staff for courses that are coming online, or to modify existing contracts for current staff who are working either 10 and a half months, moving them to 12 months, or so forth. So we're looking at making sure we have an instructional specialist for every core area. Right now we have instructional specialists for English and math. We do not have history instructional specialist or science. So we're looking to add a history science instructional specialist. We're looking to offer nursing assistant. The nursing assistance program is under right now in application and will be offered next year. The students are coming. We need a teacher for that nursing assistant program. And we also are expanding some of our electives at the high school, barbering, where we want to offer a future teachers course, and American Sign Language was offered this year. Now that those students have taken a first year, we're looking at expanding to year 2 and hopefully possibly year 3 for those students who are taking American Sign Language. So those are some of the changes under teaching and learning. Under school and community relationships, we want to provide interpreting and translators for parents whose primary language is not English. That is a federal mandate. We do have some staff who could provide interpreter or translation services, and that dollar amount would basically reflect a stipend for those individuals who are providing that service. Under health and safety, we're looking at adding daytime custodians to several of our sites. We only have 1 or 2 custodians working during the day, and then the bulk of our custodians currently work in the evenings. We're looking at changing the shifts of custodians to make sure there's some overlap with the day, but we also see a need for additional custodians at some of our schools where we've added additional square footage, where we're light on staff. So that request would allow us to readjust our custodial services to make sure we have better coverage. A division safety and compliance officer is an item that was identified that would allow us to work better in hands with our sheriff's department to ensure that our schools are safe by coordinating drills, making sure mandated reports are filed, making sure that we have proactive measures in place to ensure our safety of our schools, and moving division safety initiatives forward. While I'm on this slide, I also would like to say that we also support the sheriff's department's request for additional school resource officers. So if that would also really increase the level of safety in all of our schools. Right now we have 2, and they're really on one side of the county. So it would help to have additional resource officers available. Goal 4 is organizational effectiveness, and this is pretty much a catch-all because it talks about how can we provide better service not only to teachers but to students in general. So some of it's instructional support, some of it's technology support, but these positions for tech support and other areas would allow us to have more efficient testing programs, more efficient tech support for students, clerical support, any areas where we feel that we are really missing the mark in terms of efficiency and service. So those are the 4 goal areas of our strategic plan and the requests that align with that, which are in our estimate of needs. The last thing here we'd like to talk about that impacted our budget is the compensation study for Caroline County. And we went over this in a workshop area, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of give a very short overview of that compensation survey. We did hire a company to do a compensation study to look at how our employees matched up with the market, with the local market in terms of compensation. They identified 60 CCPS employee classifications, and then they went out to the market and they solicited input from local school divisions and the county on similar positions to make a general comparison with salary. These are some of the school divisions and that participated in that study, and we're very thankful for them providing the survey information that allowed us to create our market analysis. Now, in terms of comparisons, you take salary employees and you have to convert their salaries to an hourly wage. So this example just takes a first-year teacher, step 0, and shows how their salary would be converted to an hourly wage of $24.50 per hour. A teacher contract is 200 days, so if you look at 8 hours a day, that gives you the annual hours, and you would take their salary and divide to get the hours per the hourly rate. The market analysis for teachers, and just since we were on teachers, ended up being a minimum market average of $26.67 compared to our starting salary of $24.50. Other staff, like bookkeepers, you used a similar comparison based on the number of days they work with an 8-hour day. So what did the study determine? It determined that we have quite a bit of work to do at the entry point of employment on our salary scales. They did say that we have to condense our salary scales to 3, one for teachers, administrators, and support, and find a way to get everyone on those 3 scales. We currently have 6. And that would make us more efficient in terms of how we handle compensation. But they also noted that 1/5 of our employees that started entry level, for their employee group, are below the market average for salary. But the scale gets a little better. Midpoint is only 6%. So if they stay with us and they get their step increases, the scale would do what it's intended to do and would get them a little closer to the market rates. But it gets even better at the end of our scales. So the key is to make sure that if we had the same scales that we have now, that we would keep giving the step increases, which would allow our employees to salaries to continue to be competitive. Now, in terms of adjustments, we had to determine what would be the cost of making those changes, and we've continued to work with our consultant. So these numbers may be a little different than our initial showing when we had the joint meeting. Bring the minimum is one of the options we were not in favor of. That just deals with taking the lowest, your entry-level folks, and bringing them up to the minimum average salary. It doesn't do anything for employees that have tenure or have been with you for a while, and it really would increase compression in terms of compensation. We would rather move in a method using class date parity, which would allow us to move all of our employees along to a market, to compare it to their classification to a market range for their compensation depending on their based on their tenure. To do that, just looking at the calculations of our employees, that's roughly around $1.6 million. Okay? We knew that figure was pretty difficult with the other priorities that we have, so we wanted more options. We looked at it, asked for a 2-year and a 3-year option. In our budget, okay, we're using the 3-year option, the first year figure for the 3-year option. However, it's up to, we'll continue to work with the Board of Supervisors to look at how we can put a first-year option in place. But that figure for the 3-year option is the figure that we're using today in the approved budget. Now, I wanted to stop right there. I put that little slide in here to make sure I didn't forget, because last year I forgot to put a plug in for capital improvement. So I had to make sure I had to stop myself. So before we get to questions and close out, I just want to know that in your packet, there is, behind the budget information in the budget letter, there is a copy of the FY19 capital improvement budget that was approved by the school board in November. Capital improvement budget is very important. We've put a lot of work into extending out the capital needs of the school division, and you have done a very good job of helping us with the bus replacements and some of our capital needs. Reversion funds have helped, but I would like to ensure that you are well informed of what are some of our capital needs as you develop your budget and approve your budget, move your budget forward. Okay. So at this time, I'm going to stop here because I think we're at a good point, and this is a great slide to stop at. Okay, together we can do more. And if you have any questions from me and my staff, we'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. We have lights. Does anyone on the board have any questions for Dr. Parker? Mr. Black?
Dr. Parker, can someone go back to that slide where you had the school enrollment coming up and down?
Go back to that. So many slides, I apologize. There you go, that's one. That one, yes, sir.
I guess the thing, Dr. Parker, that concerns me is I think that number, I've been harping on that for a while, the number of teachers. You saw teachers 25. That was positions lost, and you've gained back 11. Just this past weekend, I had a teacher at the Polar Bear Plunge tell me, complaining about class size. And so that's a concern of mine because I do believe that lower class size is beneficial to the students. And I see there that we've got, you lost 25 teachers, but you've replaced them only with 11. So I don't know if there's something that can be done, or, on the VDOA website from last year, we're not ranked very well on student-teacher ratio. So, I've said that to you last budget season.
Well, actually, 2 years straight.
Yes, I have. So, I just want to let you know that that is a concern of mine.
It is with me as well, and I know that we, if I had it my way, we could bring every class down, even at middle school, to 25. But we're talking about just 14 teachers alone at $60,000 a pop. We can do some quick math and tell how expensive that would be. We do have instructional positions in this year's budget. We'll continue, and one is a teacher at the middle school. Last year, we did add 2 teachers this year at the beginning of the year. We continue to do that whenever we see a need for instructional teachers, and it's based on class size. But in terms of just generically bringing teachers back when our class sizes are within SOQ range, we don't have the finances to do that. If working on class size is a priority for this board and our board, we would need the additional funding necessary to bring teachers back at $60,000 a pop.
So, I guess my question to you then, and just briefly, there's 14 or 15 positions that you're asking for, correct? Additional positions total?
I don't think it's 14. I think it's less than that. I'm trying to go back to the slide here. Because some of the positions are just increasing 10-month employees to 12-month employees. So it's not a new position. So it's less than 14. We do,
So how many of those, so let's say it's 12, how many of those are full-time teachers? I mean, how many of those are classroom teachers that are going to be face-to-face with students?
2, 3, 4, 5.
I mean, full-time class, not roving,
3 part-time, full-time nursing, full-time English. Those are only instructional, right? 8? Okay. Ms. Holt, just keep me honest here. Okay, I'm going back to, I'd have to count them off the sheet. So it's eight instructional positions, Deborah, just to make sure. Okay,
those
this
instructional
slide
positions, are they?
This slide right here is at full-time nursing. You have the instructional specialists already here. It's just bringing them up to 12-month. You have a full-time English. You have the part-time teacher, 1 FT to the high school. So count that as a full-time teacher. Okay, so that's 3 off of the sheet. These are already employed individuals just getting a stipend. Custodial positions are support staff positions. So those are your only
3
instructional positions that are under
So there's
instruction
3.
right there.
Okay. And then the last question I have for you, if you could go back one slide before that, there was one I was just kind of curious about, was your, you said attendance. Do you guys have an attendance policy here in Caroline?
Yes, we do have an attendance policy.
What, just out of curiosity, what is that? I
It's
mean,
about a
just
2-page document.
Can you send it?
I
Oh,
have
that's
to-
fine. Could you
yeah.
could you send it to me?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Thomas.
Dr. Parker, let me say first of all that I appreciate all the work that you and the teachers do for the students in Caroline. It's really our future, and I think I've said that to you before. I do have one thing that I think is unfair for all of us, and I've tried to bring this up for every legislator I've ever talked to in Richmond, but you spend $3.6 million on transportation, and I think our budget's about the same as Fredericksburg. They don't spend anywhere near that much. So we could take care of the salary study if Richmond would just include a transportation component in the budget.
I agree.
So I will continue to prod our legislators as much as possible, but I think that's one thing we need to fix.
I agree.
And the other question I had was you put up a lot of localities that you compared for the salary study. Is it possible that we could have a cost of living comparison for those localities? Because if I make $40,000 or whatever in Caroline, that's not the same as making $40,000 in Henrico, and it's definitely not the same as making $40,000 in Pulaski or one of those other smaller counties. So I'm sure your consultant has some sort of data that would give us
I will ask. I'm looking over at Charlie because I think he would probably be closer to that information than I would be as far as cost of living. We don't receive that type of information from a school division standpoint in terms of how much it costs to live in Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania. I will look for it. And I'll ask the consultant if there's a way we can get that information. Where we normally compare is with actual budgets and tax revenue.
Right.
And actual revenue into the counties, the localities' coffers, their ability to pay, those types of things. So, and the figures that you use in the LCI and other areas, they factor in the county's wealth. So we don't necessarily go for what their actual cost of living might be, but those are factored into the LCI, which gives us a pretty good comparison there.
Well, I'm kind of a little basic person, and cost of living means a lot more than the amount of money you make here is a lot less if I go to Fairfax, and vice versa. So I just
But
like
Fairfax has a higher LCI because based on that, their ability to pay for public education. And that's based on the property, the businesses, the wealth of the
and a lot more people.
population and the
Right.
number of students.
But I just want to compare, give me some kind of basic roadmap that I can compare. And I guess the last thing for me is I'm a confessed hoarder, so if you could send me this electronically, I'd really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Be
sir.
happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Forehand?
Dr. Parker, what's the difference between a specialist, like an instructional specialist, and a teacher? And is that specialist counted in the classroom instructional number that we were compared to in one of the slides?
Their support, but their instructional support. But a specialist is basically professional development support for teachers. They train teachers. They also work with students. Also, our instructional specialists actually work with students and teachers. So and in many cases we've had to pull them from their instructional specialist role to actually teach class because we may have had some holes in our lineup. So we've used them in several different ways. But what you have, they're your curriculum folks. When you have new courses, when you have to revise courses, when you have to add STEM activities into a course or technology, or you have new mandates coming from the state, they also are the ones who assist teachers in their assessment planning and preparing students for the SOLs. They go in and actually do mentoring, do training and observation of teachers and give them feedback on instruction. So they're the people who actually provide a lot of instructional support for the folks that teach in their content area. And as I stated, we only have two core areas covered, English and math. We do not have instructional specialists at this time in the areas of history or science. With the computer science curriculum being mandated by the state, with STEM education coming online, and we're trying to infuse more STEM activities into the classroom, okay, we're a little light on our instructional supportive role for our teachers. Teachers don't just come and all of a sudden they're great in the classroom. You have you have to actually work quite hard and provide a lot of professional development and support for teachers to get good at their craft, and that's what our instructional specialists allow for.
Okay. Thank you. Just, it's a term I'm not familiar with.
Mr. Seeley?
I guess this is a question for Mr. Cully and for Dr. Parker. In some of the school numbers that I've seen, is the capital that the county pays for the school in terms of capital projects factored into the numbers that go into the percentage of county contribution?
That's operational.
No, the state only considers operational costs. So everything he showed you there, capital's not figured into anywhere.
But it comes into our budget situation.
Oh, yeah, it factors
Can
into where we
you
raise
get
the
us
funds for it.
what our capital costs are for this upcoming year?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Parker.
Thank you all, and thank you for your support.
That takes us to appointments. Our appointment tonight is Bowling Green District Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Seeley?
Madam Chairman, I am not ready with that appointment yet.
Very good. We will move that on to our next agenda. And that takes us to our consent agenda. Is there anyone that would like to pull or change anything on the consent agenda? Discussion? If not, do I have a motion that the consent agenda be accepted?
Did we want Mr. Cully to explain G?
All right. We're going to get an explanation on item G, which was added to the agenda.
The information was included at your place. We had a 2011 bus that caught fire and was totaled. The schools received a check for $42,076 to cover that, but of course you can't buy a new bus for that, so it would need additional amount of $49,727. The amount of the new bus is $91,803. So you could add this to the financing we're going to do for buses next year. You could authorize them to go on and get it. We could finance it, or you could take it out of the fund balance. So that's the two choices. They clearly, don't want to buy a used bus. We need, going to replace this bus.
Do you have a recommendation, Mr. Cully?
Fund balance? What's your recommendation? Fund balance?
Fund balance is easier, although I don't want to keep taking things from the fund balance. If it's a way to, if you give us the option to see if we can make the financing work, would be my preferred method, because sort of out of budget? Because we're going to be doing a couple anyway.
How urgently they need this bus?
Oh, he needs it right now.
Yesterday?
Yesterday. I don't think we'll delay that whether we finance it or not.
Just out of curiosity, where did it catch fire?
I think somewhere down in Sparta. Perimeter Road, backside of Fort APL.
Why don't we give Mr. Cully the authority to figure out the best method to finance this bus? We already know it caught on fire, JD.
Excuse me,
I
sir.
think we're good.
How fast did the fire department get there?
Very fast. The fire was just a little bit faster than they were.
Okay.
But they did an excellent job, and I've let them people know that.
We're just glad no one was hurt.
That's the key.
Was it en route? During a route? Is it during a route?
Just a quick overview. It was about 11 kids on the bus. A driver is high school, middle school. She seen smoke. She stopped in a safe place, pulled the bus to the side, got the kids off. She went back, done her bus check, come back, seen flames. She got her stuff and got to a safe place and watched the bus burn.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion that we move forward with the purchase of the bus, giving the county administrator the authority to determine the most efficient fiscal manner, finance, or fund balance.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that brings us to
We didn't do the consent
the
agenda.
rest of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept items A through F?
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
At this time, public,
Can we do
Can we
closed
take
session
a
in that
break?
amount of time? No, it's Joey.
All right, because we're scheduled for public comment at 7:30, we have some time in between. We are going to move, we have a closed session scheduled at the end of our agenda. We're going to give you all a break while we move into closed session. Mr. Forehand.
I move that this board now go into closed session to discuss matters exempt from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. The purpose of this closed meeting is, 1, to discuss the acquisition of real property for public purpose in the Port Royal area of the county, which is exempted pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia, because discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the county. And 2, to discuss the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, which is exempted pursuant to 2.2-3711A6 of the Code of Virginia, because if made public, initially the financial interest of the government unit could be or would be adversely affected. And 3, to discuss the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds and the terms of scope of such contract, which is exempted pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A29 of the Code of Virginia, because discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position of the or negotiating strategy of the county.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will be back as close to 7:30 as we can. Stretch your legs. Do I have a motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
Second? Second to come out of closed session, please?
Yes. Second.
Any discussion? Would you please read the statement?
All right, I move that the Board of Supervisors certify that to the best of each board member's knowledge that, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirement by Virginia law were discussed in closed meeting, to which this certification applies, and 2, only Only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
All right. So can I forgot to ask for a vote to come out of closed session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas, do you so certify?
I so certify.
Mr. Black?
I so certify.
Mr. Sealy?
I so certify.
Mr. Forehand?
I so certify.
And I so certify. We are back in general session. At this time, and there's a motion in result of closed session. Mr. Forehand.
Regarding closed session, I move that we authorize staff to conduct the contract negotiation actions in Port Royal as discussed in closed session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. No, I said that. All right. That takes us to public comment. The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing the public to speak to the board on any matter which is not scheduled for a public hearing at this meeting. To help conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, please refrain from clapping or other signs of support or opposition. Be respectful to all. The public comment period shall not serve as a forum for debate with the board or a question and answer period with the board. Remarks shall be addressed only to the board and not to the staff, the audience, or the media. All public comments shall be made in a respectful manner. Cursing and antagonistic behavior are prohibited and shall be grounds for removal from the meetings. Comments should focus on matters or issues before the board or county and not individual board members or staff. Comments which single out an individual board member or staff may be ruled out of order by the chair. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name and voting district if applicable. There shall be a time limit for each individual speaker of 3 minutes. No speaker shall address the board more than once during the public comment period at any single board meeting. The county administrator will time the speakers and notify them when their time has expired. With that being read and said, at this time, I will open the floor to public comment. Anyone liking to address the board at this time, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Whiteman. I'm from the Bowling Green District, specifically Sparta. I'm a retired Marine vet, having served 21 years. I commanded 2 different companies of Marines in 2 different wars, and I have a first-hand knowledge of veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. I heard Mr. Forehand's comments at the beginning, and I think it's sad that people sit at a keyboard and look at a screen and type stuff where they aren't held accountable. I don't feel anybody in this county is against veterans. 2 things that are near and dear to me are veterans and puppies, and those of you that know me know that. I think this Leashes of Valor program is a good program. I want you to know when Mr. Watts and Mr. Lohr sold these kids this dwelling, that they recommended they contact me because of the things they wanted to do, specifically some building. I met on site with them, and they explained to me their program and what they wanted to do. I gave them the requirements for the building and permitting, and when they said about cottages, I directed them to planning and community development because there were some permits and SEs that I thought would be required. Explaining to them the process, they came into planning and community development, and they applied to be a kennel. And I don't think anybody knew staying on site for the veterans and the kennel. Anyhow, it kind of morphed into not only a kennel SE, but a therapeutic clinic SE. It's not something they applied for. It was the direction they were given, and I don't know where that came from. Last month, when the text amendment came up, and then it was defeated because it didn't match the zoning, the folks from Leashes of Valor didn't have the opportunity to present their side or what they were trying to do. So I got with them and let them know that the text amendment didn't pass or didn't move forward because they had planned to come to the public hearing, which how it normally happens. The text amendment for the cottages under therapeutic, however they get there, I don't think they care. The cottages for the vets to come in and receive the training is critical to their program with their service dogs once the dogs are ready to go. So however we get there, I think there's some things that aren't connecting. Understanding zoning, we've got rules for the county, and we have to enforce them equitably across the board. But I think there's room somewhere that we can find for these kids to run their operation. I was shocked when I got to looking at their program and what they do. I pulled up the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs August statement, and I was shocked to find that 20 of my fellow vets are killing themselves a day. Every 72 minutes, a veteran's taking their life. And I really believe this program can help some of those. And I have no doubts those of us in Caroline support that. It's just a matter of how we get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
How y'all doing? Captain Jason Haig, United States Marine Corps retired. I'm the CEO for Leashes of Valor. First and foremost, I am going to address the board. Mrs. Long, I want to apologize first and foremost from Leashes of Valor and all of our supporters. It was at no point that any of us and anybody that we are a part of would ever send anything like that. And I'll give you an example. We would never want to have a stigma attached to you as far as your patriotism is concerned. It's the same thing that we battle every day, having being diagnosed with PTSD. That's how we look at it. So I wouldn't want to have that burden put on you that we have on us every day. As far as our program is concerned, just like Kevin had talked about, we are a veteran-owned and operated business. We are all wounded and disabled. We all have service dogs. We know what we're doing. We have been doing this for over 5 years. We have all put a leash in the hand of over 300 veterans. No suicides. We know what we're doing. Like I said, we have 20 beautiful acres out there on Sparta. It's plenty of room for all of us. Like we were talking about all of the zoning and different things like that, I don't know all about that. It's free of charge to our veteran. We'll bring them from anywhere in the country. There was a lot of different talk about where we're going to be at in a few years. We're doing one veteran right now for the next year. We are only going to grow into 3 veterans a year, or 3 veterans a month, I apologize. That's it. I wish I could do more, but we won't want to grow into bigger than that because we are keeping that small unit leadership, that family, that community, just like it is here in Bowling Green and Caroline. The other thing is, I know they've had some problems here in Caroline with Remuda Ranch. I might not be saying that right as far as a failing business is concerned, but you're comparing apples to oranges. Like I said, we've started 2 different companies, one in Florida, one in Washington, D.C. They're flourishing. The one in Florida is one of the largest in the country. The one in Washington, D.C. is the oldest. They asked us to come in and start their service dog program. We've branched out and started our own. Again, we are all veterans. We know what we're doing. That's why we're here. That's why we picked this community. We researched all these, the codes, and because you had businesses that came here and did it before. We thought you all would be amicable to that. That's why we're here to do this in this community. Some of you all mentioned some earlier in your comments about some of the money and things. This is going to be my last comment as far as the money. There's one statistic that I looked up just the other day because of some of the medications that I was on. I was on 32 medications at my lowest point before I had gotten Axel. That was in 2012 after my last tour of Afghanistan. I looked at the statistics 2 weeks ago to find out how much money is spent on PTSD. It is $42.3 billion every year on PTSD. That's work loss, medication, hospitalization, that does not take into account service dogs. It doesn't. It costs $25,000 for that dog right there. It costs $42 billion for all the drugs. We are saving lives at Leashes of Valor. I need your all's help so I can save more lives. Thank you all very much.
My name is Gary Dudley, excuse me, Western District. First off, I'm president of the Ladysmith Ruritan Club, and I would like to thank Mr. Cully for DJing the Caroline County Polar Bear Club event. Also, I didn't recognize him without his yellow hat on. We raised, as Mr. Black said, we raised $17,000, 9 organizations, and all of that goes back to the county residents. Second thing is, I'm on the Planning Commission. I did the site visit for Leashes of Valor. Every question that was asked of them, they answered very, very well. I do not understand why this was turned down or denied. I really think this needs to go forward. Please do everything you can to get this to move forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Cervantes. I'm the attorney for Leashes of Valor. I have known Captain Jason Haig and the Messingles from before Leashes of Valor was created. In fact, my law firm was the one that actually helped start it. We've gone through and worked with them really from the ground up on creating this. And I've gotten to know them in a personal capacity as well as a professional capacity, and I've really been impressed with how the nonprofit world is very difficult to navigate, and they have just run through trying to go through all the checklists of the federal government, the state government, the municipalities, and they haven't let anything of that deter them. The entire process, every roadblock, they haven't let that deter them, even when the attorneys have been frustrated. And so I'm really wasn't going to get involved in this with them, and I certainly heard the comments at the beginning of this, and I know Leashes of Valor, their hearts, that they were not behind any of the ill words that were spoken to anybody on this board. I would not be part of that. But I do just want to say that my role in this is to make sure that the Constitution is followed, and that the laws of this country are followed with that. And so I would just like to say that, just point you guys to the Fair Housing Act, also to the ADA, and just looking through that. You guys are not permitted to make any decisions based on people's stereotypes of veterans in particular, but especially disabled veterans. And so my firm decided to get involved when we're hearing these comments in the news about people that are making comments. I just want to, I know everyone's heard it, but I wanted to read it one more time because I really want, you've heard a huge testimony from these people, and I really, not just from a legal standpoint, but from like a heart perspective, I think this comment needs to be reread. And somebody, I'm not sure who this person is, but they said, you're talking about individuals with post-traumatic stress disorder. So at this point, my main concern is being a neighbor right next door to them and a church right next door. That's incredibly hurtful to these guys. Like these guys and girls, they've overcome a lot. And this board should have shut that comment down. Under the Fair Housing Act, you're not even supposed to permit people to be talking about that. You can't make any decisions. So our concern is just that it looks an awful lot like those comments were made, and then this board meeting happened where they weren't given notice and they weren't given the ability to kind of say their side of things, and they've been trying to be completely transparent with you guys. Our position is just that we really feel like those kind of comments are not productive at all. For sure, this is a public hearing, and everybody has the right to make a comment, but this board is not allowed to entertain that. And I'm happy to provide you with the literature on that and the legislation on that. If you need that. I don't want to make this a negative thing. I know that you guys fully support veterans. I know that several of you have a military family. And I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that you guys are being discriminatory at all, just that there were some people in this county, and that wears on this organization. There's not that many of them. The nonprofit world is difficult, it's expensive, and there's like basically 3 or 4 of them doing what about 50 people should be doing. So I just want to leave this and say that I've worked with them in trying to get everything exactly how everybody wants everything, and what I'm left with is that they've been in this process with you guys for 5 months from the time the initial application was submitted. The planning and community development, that was who marked this as a mental health facility. That was not their idea. They hand wrote it into their application, and I mean, that's where we're at. And I just want, and they're just getting, things are just getting delayed. And Leashes of Valor,
Could you finish up, please?
yes, ma'am, sorry. And just to sort of close on that, Leashes of Valor really is trying to save lives. When you heard the statistic about 8,030 veterans committing suicide every year, that means in 5 months, 3,345 have. So if this is going to be turned down, I would ask that you streamline another process for them so that they can just get to what they're trying to do, which is just to save lives.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ildefonso Aranda III. I'm a 21-year Marine Corps veteran, Master Sergeant retired. Leashes of Valor, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about them. I was going through some therapy. Well, first off, we've already talked about a couple times, from a couple people up here, about saving lives. I haven't told anybody this. I think I just told Jason earlier. I was in therapy for PTSD. I was going through dog training and dog therapy. The group and the organization I was with had to remove me out of that. I was retiring. I didn't have nothing going on, and I wasn't a part of anything. Pretty much at my wit's ends. Took one phone call. I called Jason, and without any question and whatnot, as they were just getting started, put letters into the command, got me out of the situation I was in, and made me be a part of something again. So with them not even training service dogs yet, just starting it, they're already saving lives. Just by letting people be a part of something. Something a little bit greater. Something that we could actually make an impact on people's lives. I wasn't going to get up here today. I wasn't going to tell anybody about that. But I was like, man, I read the article, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to come forth, and I'm going to let people know, yes, I was at my wit's end. They're already saving lives by letting people just be a part of and volunteering. So whatever it is, the schematics, the politics, the zonings, or whatever it is, I hope that everybody can see through that because they're already saving lives. And I just want to say thank you.
Good evening. My name's Tamara Eckes, and I'm a registered nurse in the state of Virginia. I've known Jason since before he got Axel, and that was before Jason could ever leave his basement. It was Axel that brought him out of his basement. I came here tonight just to share a little information with all of you about PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder is an anxiety-based condition. It is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. It's a complex disorder that is often misunderstood. PTSD may develop following exposure to an extreme trauma, a terrifying event, or an ordeal that a person has experienced, witnessed, or learned about, especially one that is life-threatening or causes physical harm. The experience causes that person to feel intense fear, horror, or a sense of helplessness. Not everyone who experiences a traumatic event will develop PTSD, but some do. I believe that education on the subject can alleviate the stigma of PTSD and veterans, and to that end, better serve our communities and all of our neighbors who may be managing PTSD. I'm wondering if everyone is aware that it's not just combat veterans that have PTSD. A study following Hurricane Katrina found that PTSD prevalence was 19% for police officers and 22% for firefighters involved in the response efforts. PTSD, suicide, and homelessness are civilian and first responder problems as much as they are veteran problems. In addition, victims of domestic violence, rape, and even a horrific traffic accident can all be diagnosed with PTSD. I know of parents that have PTSD because of the traumatic death of one of their children. PTSD has a stigma. Part of it is because it makes a good story, when in reality, the real stories remain untold. The real stories of our veterans are, they're just like us. They're real people every day that deal with difficulties every day. Our veteran population's been highlighted due to the trauma of combat. The PTSD many suffer can be better supported through our understanding and our consideration instead of a misunderstanding and fear. It's my belief that in order to honor our service members, our veterans, that we must try to understand their sacrifice for us and the pain that they carry every day so freely on our behalf. As we better understand PTSD, we can better understand how our veterans are impacted, but also how our neighbors and our community members that suffer from PTSD are impacted. Let's not be swayed by misunderstanding or fear. Let's all support our veterans through understanding and respect. One of the myths about PTSD is that symptoms happen immediately after the traumatic event. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of the times it's within about 3 months, but a lot of the times, especially for our veterans, it's years out. And that's especially true when they transition out of the military. And it's that time that our communities can step up and support our veterans and give them that feeling of community that they're leaving when they leave the military service. Sorry, I'm almost done. One of the other myths is that PTSD that only affects war veterans. PTSD can affect anyone, as I mentioned before. Almost 70% of Americans will be exposed to a traumatic event in their lifetime. Of those people, up to 20% of those people could develop PTSD. I'd like to point out, too, that veterans contribute to their communities. According to a recent study, there are 2.6 million post 9/11 veterans, and by 2019, that number is going to be expected to be over 3.5 million. They've shown to serve in leadership positions because of their work ethic and that leadership experience. I want to just follow up real quick and remind everyone, you don't always know who it is that has PTSD. It can be the teacher in your kid's school. It can be the pastor in your church. It can be the least likely person you would expect, but if they had a traumatic event, they could have PTSD. It's not just because they're a veteran.
Thank you.
And my best advice would be get to know your neighbors. Your neighbors are the ones that have protected you.
Thank you. This time. She's coming in.
My name is Shelley Witt. I'm a Spotsylvania County resident, and I work as a veteran advocate. I fell into that position because of Jason Hay. I met him in Axel 5 years ago when he was first getting Axel. I was familiar with PTSD because my son was diagnosed with it in 2002 after the DC sniper shootings came to Spotsylvania County. He began to have nightmares after they had shooter drills in the school, and for 2.5 years. So I was familiar with what PTSD was. And I had great compassion after reading a 3-part article that was written by Freelance Star on Captain Jason Haig. I come from a very military family. My grandfather was on the USS Missouri when MacArthur signed the peace treaty. I have his brother that went down on the Arizona, and my dad was 25 years Navy. So I am a patriot, and I wanted to help Jason, and he was very nice to come out to do a speaking engagement. And we did a fundraiser for him at my son's high school, and during a football game. You could hear a pin drop on that field when he spoke to those 100 football players that day. He was nervous.
It's been great to watch him grow as a speaker because he's come a long way. But he did an amazing job. And I want to touch on something that, as Caroline County, you will benefit from by having Leashes of Valor in your county. I help them by doing events and by bringing events and fundraisers to Caroline County. You're bringing revenue. You're bringing people into the county that will get to know your county. You're reaching other veterans. There's a lot of great things. Jason's worked directly with and taught me how now to work. I work directly with my Board of Supervisors. I've been invited to their Economic Board and Tourism to speak about veterans and events that I plan, all because of Jason. I now work with 14 different organizations, and what I do is I connect that veteran to the organization, and through Jason, Matt, and Danique, I've been able to match 5 veterans with service dogs. That's 5 lives that were saved. There's a need for this in Caroline County. There's a gap in between DC, Walter Reed, and the Richmond VA. We need to fill that gap. We have that help in Stafford. We have it in Spotsylvania County. I feel like you need it here, and we greatly benefit from it. Leashes of Valor has a far, far reach beyond this community, beyond the state, and nationwide. And I really appreciate, you guys thinking about not just what they can do as far as passing the permit, but allowing them to come into the community welcomed so that they can reach more veterans and be an asset to this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sean Donahue. I sit on the board of directors of Kairos Charities. I'm speaking to you this evening on behalf of Leashes of Valor. I would like to tell you a little bit about what we do as an organization, how we came to be involved in such an outstanding organization. Kairos Charities is a charity accelerator. Much like an investor would invest in a business, we invest in charities, either with time and resources. Our mission is to accelerate charities, either through helping charities get started or helping charities grow. We work only with motivated and passionate people, and the main criteria is to work with us is to either be a charity or a project, and you must be have an impactful impact. About 3 years ago, we went on a search for programs that could make an impact to the veteran community. We quickly realized that we wanted to be involved in combating our country's astronomical veteran suicide rate of 20 vets a day, and that service dogs were one of the most effective ways to treat post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. Having the privilege of seeing how these extraordinary service dogs save lives is something truly special. So when we were presented with the opportunity to support Leashes of Valor, we didn't hesitate. They exceeded all of our criteria, and not only were they saving veteran lives, they were saving canine lives too by rescuing dogs from high-kill shelters. This is highlighted by their philosophy of one leash saves 2 lives. We also were motivated by their commitment to a small, hands-on, individualized program. It was clear to us that there would never be a large, impersonal treatment facility that we're all too familiar with. This operation would be different. The personalized nature of the program means things like 1-to-1 veteran-to-staff ratio. It means veterans are getting tailored help that they need to survive. It means that lives will be saved. When it comes to these veterans, I also think it's important to mention that there's probably a misconception about PTSD. It's important to not let our imaginations or Hollywood representation paint a false picture here. They look like me. I also happen to be a Marine Corps veteran and a combat veteran. They look like the people in this audience. It could be your sons, your daughters. These veterans are selected for these types of programs are carefully reviewed. They are committed to overcoming this disability, and you see the impact almost immediately. I'd like to finish with a brief story about Jake. Jake has been one of our most involved volunteers, and he even built Leashes of Valor website in his free time. Everyone knew that Jake was passionate about this cause, but what most didn't know was his brother, Sergeant Myers, committed suicide on November 11th, 2014. Yes, on Veterans Day. This is the driving force behind his commitment. Sergeant Myers served honorably in the United States Army from 2004 to 2008. His last unit was the 82nd Airborne, where he deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan. Upon being honorably discharged, he struggled with PTSD, which ultimately led to his suicide. The housing that we're discussing this evening is going to be dedicated to Sergeant Myers. To let his brother's memory serve as an inspiration and drive for why we do what we do. Jake, his family, and Leashes of Valor all agree that had Sergeant Myers received the type of support that Leashes of Valor provides, he would still be alive today. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak tonight?
Good evening. My name is Charles Albert. I'm a member of the Bowling Green District. I just want to come up here and show my support for Leashes of Valor. I'm also a 7-year combat vet from the United States Army. I want to echo a few comments that were made earlier in regards to, it seems like there's a general consensus to compare Leashes of Valor to Remuda. And I'm really not quite sure how that comparison ever developed. And we all were here when we went through the whole roller coaster ride with Remuda. It's a completely different animal. I think all these guys are doing here, and I implore you to take the time to listen to them and hear what it is that they're doing, is they're simply bringing a vet onto their location and teaching them how to work with their service dog. I'm not really sure how that transcends into the therapeutic world, but I implore you all, before you make a judgment on these guys, take the time to learn who they are, what it is that they're trying to do, and remember that there are a lot of vets out here in this county that are rolling for them. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening?
Good evening. My name is Susan Merdler, and I'm from Spotsylvania County. I work for the Department of Veterans Affairs, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I just mentioned that because I work in contracts, and two of the contracts that I work with are the National Suicide Hotline and the Service Dog Health Insurance contracts, and those got me interested in this case. But I also met Mr. Haig and Dominique Massengill at a fundraiser for Operation Enduring Warrior because I'm very enthusiastic about helping veterans. I'm a veteran. I'm an Army veteran. My son is an Army veteran, and he came back, and my son was fine. But good friends of mine who also were there the evening that Mr. Haig was there were the Kletskys, and you may know this face. He's the Stafford County Mystery Marine. His name is Corporal Mario Kletsky, and he wasn't so lucky. He died from the invisible wounds of war on September 24th, 2016. And I'll tell you, had he had a dog, maybe that would have made all the difference. And I'll tell you this, how do I know this? Because my husband was killed in a plane crash in 2002, and I know what it feels like to be at your wit's end and to have PTS and to want to just end it all. I know how that feels. I know how Mario felt that night. I didn't take those steps because I was surrounded by healthcare workers and I was okay. But I'm telling you, they can save lives, and it really makes a difference. As a veteran and a mother of a veteran and the friend of this family, so please do what you can to help them. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Public comment session is now closed. Thank you all for your comments. We now will proceed to our public hearings. Our first public hearing tonight is the proposed amendment to Chapter 5, Section 5.5 of the
Madam
Code.
Chairman,
Yes.
may I interrupt for a second? What's the process for Leashes of Valor? They have a public hearing next month?
Next month, 13th.
On the 13th? For their actual project?
For their commercial kennel, for their kennel.
Which has nothing to do with the therapeutic issue.
Right.
So if that passes, they would actually be able to have their project with, you're pointing with, okay. Okay, Mr. Fincham, if that passes, they would be able to have their project with the veterans coming in, or
You would have
explain?
to
'Cause
address that through conditions on the special exception permit, or if you were uncomfortable with that, come up with another way to address the housing.
Okay, so we could conceivably address the housing and the requirement for land use during their public hearing next month.
That would be consistent with the original application.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we all understood that. You've all made compelling cases. You really didn't have to make a compelling case, because for me, because I understand, I turned 18 the year after they stopped the draft. And I know what PTSD folks are like before they even called it PTSD. We just said he had problems when he came back home. So I do appreciate all you've done. Thank you for your service. We will do the best we can next month. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it.
All right, we will move forward now with our public hearing on the amendment to Chapter 5, Section 5.5 of the Code of Caroline, election districts to change the location of the Dawn polling precinct. And this would go to who? Mr. Fincham, Alan? Thank you all very much. Drive home carefully.
Madam Chair, members of the board, you pretty well stated the purpose of the public hearing in your introduction of the agenda item. Simply is to amend the county ordinance as is required to change the polling precinct. In this case, the Dawn precinct, to change the location from the Dawn Progressive Association to the Dawn Library. Requires an ordinance amendment to do that. So that is the purpose of this public hearing.
This public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment on this?
Madam Chair and the rest of the board, thank you for this opportunity. I really don't have a comment. I just want you to know that the Board of Election is here. Our chairman is John Nunley. He could not be here. I'm the vice chairman. Cheryl Johnson is here. And if there are questions that we can answer, we'll do what we can. We are here to support what the board is recommending. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue?
Good evening. My name is George Spinner, and I live in the Mattaponi District. I didn't quite hear everything Mr. Parton said because of the commotion of people leaving, but my understanding is they want to change the voting precinct from the Dawn Progressive Center to the Dawn Library. I believe the Dawn Library is too small to be able to handle voting at any time, especially during elections where you might have a large population. The parking lot is too small, and there's also just not the room in the library. The one community room that's in there is not big enough to really host voting, and I hope you all will take that into consideration and maybe find someplace else. There are a number of large churches in our area that would be able to host the voting precinct, and I just think that might be a better choice. Although I do not live in the Dawn area or in the Dawn voting district, that is part of my community, and I am interested in that. I'm also a member of the library board, and I go into the Dawn Library quite a bit, which is why I know the library is too small. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? Is there anyone else? Hearing none, this public hearing is closed. her down. Can we ask Kathy to come up? Kathy, could you come up? We have a couple questions. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Kathy McVeigh. I'm the General Registrar of Caroline County.
Ms. McVeigh, I asked you basically the same question that we just heard a comment on, and you feel that after looking at the Dawn Library that you can work
Yes.
it?
I have personally been down there and talked to the librarian, and the library has always been very receptive because we use, we coordinate with the one in Port Royal. They've offered to close the office that day. We can use the entire library. We won't be confined to just the conference room. So I think we could be adequate there. We'll have good lighting, and we'll have adequate parking. So I think it will be a very suitable place.
Anyone else have a question for Ms. McVeigh while she's here? Thank you
Okay,
very much.
Thank you so much.
Is there a motion concerning this? Discussion?
I believe Mr. Underwood had said he thought this was a good idea, and he spoke to me and asked me if I would make the motion for that, so I'd move that we move the Reedy Church precinct to the Dawn Library.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Our second public hearing this evening is an ordinance, is text amendment 13 through 17, 2016. We're going to do them all in one shot, guys. It's an amendment to the zoning ordinance of Caroline County by amending Article 2, Section 2, definitions to repeal and replace the definition of a motor vehicle minor repair service. And the purpose is to clarify what constitutes a minor repair service facility and to remove development standards from the definition. Then, do I need to read all these?
I'll do that if you want me to.
Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your next public hearing tonight will be actually a public hearing on 5 text amendments which are related to the same issue. TXT 13-26 would amend the definition of a motor vehicle minor repair and service facility. TXT 14-2016 would amend the definition of a motor vehicle major repair or service facility. TXT 15-2016 would establish development standards related to the auto repair and service facilities. Currently, some of those standards are actually in a definition, which is not necessarily a good thing. We're creating a section of development standards that would apply automatically in addition to any, for example, special exception standards that you might place. TXT 16-2016 would allow minor motor vehicle repair service facilities minor as a permitted use in the B1 district. And as we previously discussed, that perhaps should be as a special exception use in the B1 district. And TXT 17-2016 would also have allowed the motor vehicle repair facility minor as a by right use in the planned mixed-use development district, specifically in the commercial services sector. These amendments actually started over a year and a half ago and spent probably 5 to 6 months at the Planning Commission working through the definitions. The background to this is currently no auto repair facility is permitted in the B1 zoning district, except for the old service station concept, the Sunoco, the Mobile, that had gasoline, other minor services. That's the only thing that's in the zoning ordinance in that district. So right now, you could not put a Tuffy muffler or a Midas brake repair facility in the B1 zoning district in Caroline County. Those changes were done a number of years ago out of concerns for other issues that were occurring on with the classification of auto repair uses, the growth of inoperable vehicles, and some of the ancillary problems that we had with those uses. And at that time, such uses were shifted to the M1 district. Over time, we've recognized that we have issues. As I said, you couldn't even put a Midas in the B1 district right now. So that was in part how these modifications to the regulations came about. The most recent issue was the prospect of an existing business in the county having to relocate potentially to a B1 property without having the necessary zoning to accommodate that change in use. That's the issue that brought these amendments to the Planning Commission or to the board at this time. And with that, I'll address any questions that the board may have.
Mr. Seeley.
Mr. Fincham, on page 2 of what we were given, and it's minor repair, motor vehicle, it looks like the cleaned up language, major repair, and then the clean version is below.
Yes, sir.
If you look at major repair, and you look at the strike-through of engine overhaul and rebuilding is stricken. When you come down to major motor vehicle repair service facility major, then you have overhaul and repair of major motor vehicle components, including engines, is there. So my question is, it's stricken above, but it's permitted in the 2 paragraphs later. I guess I don't understand.
I think that was probably a mistake on my end because I was trying to go through.
That's fine.
Yes, that should be in there.
I'm just making sure that because we strike it here and then we include it here.
Yes, you're correct. That should be there. Because
Okay.
that fits in that major repair.
Just making sure we're all agreeing to the same thing.
Yes, Mr. Forehand.
Under major.
Mr. Fincham?
Yes, sir.
What separates a planned unit development from other things? Can you help me out with that? The examples that we have in the county right now that I can relate to?
That's really the only other designation where we have a commercial zoning district is in the planned mixed-use development, specifically commercial service areas and shopping centers. Again, in the current planned mixed-use development regulations, a service station is a use that's permitted by right in the commercial service area of a PMUD, which is why initially the recommendation to include this as a permitted use as a by right use was included because you've already got service stations there. Yeah. Even though it's an archaic term that you don't see those anymore, or very few of them.
Anyone else? Any further discussion? Do I have a motion?
Actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have any other questions for the board?
One
See the lights
remaining
on.
question. The Planning Commission voted to deny text 17-2016.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us some insight in what the discussions were? Because not privy that I recall to what those discussions, what path they led down to result in that.
I think the concern in a PMUD, you can have an integration of uses. So you can have, in some instances, a commercial use right next or in proximity to a residential use. I think the concern was, notwithstanding what's allowed now, the concern was the compatibility of that type of commercial use with the residential use. And again, you could do we have discussed the concerns about this being a by right use. The same discussion about making this a special exception permit use applies to that as well.
So it is by special. It is by special exception, correct?
Right now, it's not listed, but if, in your motion, that would be appropriate to make it a special exception use, if that's what you desire.
Okay, am I good to go ahead and open for public comment? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fincham. At this time, I'll open the floor for public comment on text amendment 13 through 17. Anyone wishing to speak on this, please come forward. Is there anyone who would wish to speak? Here comes somebody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I am new to Richmond. I'm new to Caroline County. I purchased the property in August, which is adjacent.
Get a little closer to
I'm
the
sorry,
mic.
which is adjacent to this property in question. And I have a lot of concerns. My concerns are property value. My concerns are the illegal dumping of tires out in the woods. There's a multitude of tires that have been left there. There's also engine mounts where they actually pulled the engines out in the woods of my property as well. So there's a lot of concerns I have with this rezoning. There's a lot of loitering at the gas station, which is just adjacent and across the way. And I'm worried about what that's going to do to the residents in the housing around this area. So you can't hear me?
No, I think you're at the wrong hearing. We're on the text amendments for the.
I'm on the B1. Am I in the right place?
No, you're at number 6.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Oh.
That's okay.
Thank you.
We'll get you right back up here.
No problem.
Thank you.
I'm so
All right.
Don't feel bad. You're not the first one who's done that.
That's all right. I almost forgot to ask for public comment, so we're doing good. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on text number 5 on our agenda, text 13-2016? No? No? Anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? Hearing none, this public hearing is closed. Gentlemen, what is your pleasure? Do you want to?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I have a couple questions. Text Amendment 15, 2016. Now I'm on 15 first. 15, 2016.
Yes, sir.
Do we have, I guess I'm trying to determine what the difference between 15 and 16 really is.
TXT 15 creates a minimum set of development standards. No outdoor repair. Okay, all repair has to be in a fully enclosed facility. So it actually creates the standards that would apply to any auto repair use. Okay, a minimum set of standards, in addition to any other standards that we have in the ordinance. TXT 16 simply allows the use. It was proposed as a by right use, but I think we've discussed that it should be a special exception use. So 15 is just a set of standards. 16 would allow the use in the B1 district.
So we don't need to add special exception in the standards in 15 for 16.
No,
Okay.
the standard.
That's all I'm making sure.
Yeah, the standards are separate. They'd automatically be applied.
Yeah, anywhere where it's in a text that says by right, that would be where you'd want to change by right to special exception. So in 16, 17, it would be where it is mentioned as a by right use. You could change that to special exception, and then you would have a review of that. The standards would still apply over top of all of that.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure I didn't miss. where that needed to be added. Can we have, anybody have any, up here have any issue with making it by special exception for either one of those? For 16 or 17?
I'm just a little on the fence. If we're going to make them do everything inside by text amendment 15,
That's correct.
then it makes it less of a driving force for me to make it by special exception for 16. I don't know, it costs more money and takes some more time to bring that full circle around to us. If somebody wants to open up a Jiffy Lube or...
It also
Midas or
applies
something
to
like
other minor auto repair that might not be as clean as a Jiffy Lube or a...
But the requirements would apply to all of them.
The requirements would apply to all, yes,
And
sir.
and I'm all in favor for those. That's a separate issue. Looking at it strictly by right versus special exception.
Is there a way to delineate that of by right, clean, by right, outside of the building? Because, I mean, I do know that there are, every place that works on cars ends up with a car out front with a hood up.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that just happens.
Yes, sir.
And so when we say this, we have real expectations. In a shopping center, if you're doing a Midas muffler and the car's up on jacks and somebody's cutting the exhaust outside because it's faster, easier, and it's nice outside that day, it sort of goes against what we intended.
Yes, sir.
And I understand the cost and the process, but I'm not sure we always have the understanding. And we've got that issue when you start with a strip mall of there's the parking lot.
Yes, sir. I think the special exception, I'm not sure all B1 properties are created equally. So having said that, the special exception process allows you to look at that on a case-by-case basis, neighborhood considerations, et cetera, that would allow you to differentiate that on a case-by-case basis to ensure consistency.
Fair enough.
Can we universally add special exception to 16 and 17?
Yes,
I'll
sir.
make a motion that we add special exception to TXT 16, 2016 and TXT 17, 2016.
So we're replacing the by right language with by special exception.
The special exception reference. Yes.
Mr. Fincham, how does this affect the prospective business that we have? That's the genesis of this. The special exception would delay their process altogether now because then they'd have to go through an extra step.
They have been advised that the special exception process was the likely process going forward, and they are fully aware of that.
Okay. I just don't want to, I mean, the genesis of this is to allow an existing business to move to another location in the county that's more conducive to their operation, and I would like to not throw additional roadblocks in their way. So,
Does it set them back any further adding this?
We are still waiting for the application, and they've been advised that in all likelihood it would be a special exception permit.
How much would it set them back, though, if they, as soon as you get the application?
Assuming that we get a request for an expedited public hearing, probably 30 to 45 days, given the submission time frame.
Mr. Fincham, can the standards be set high enough to keep people from having to go through a special exception and still protect view shed and that type of thing? To protect everyone's property?
I think it's going to be hard to come up. I think, one, you'd have to significantly beef the standards up above what was recommended. But I still think you've got those individual neighborhood or adjacent property issues that it's going to be hard to come up with standards that address everything.
All right, thank you. You've been
Mr.
doing
Fincham,
this a lot longer than I have.
would you have an issue if we approve 13 through 15 and delayed 16 and 17?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion that we approve text amendment 13, 2016.
Just a moment.
No.
No.
To amend, but we're going to come back.
Yeah, we're not doing those now. We're doing 13 right now. So his motion was going to be to amend 16 and 17. But I think if my math is right, 13 comes before 16 and 17.
You want to do 13, 14, 15?
Correct.
You're proposing to amend the definitions and adopt the development standards.
Correct. And then I'll give you 30 days to have an application in, and we'll, at our next meeting, vote on 16 and 17.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, my motion stands.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have to do them one at a time.
I said 13.
13.
13.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
You have to say motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you, Floyd.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve text amendment 14, 2016.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Madam Chairman, I would motion that text amendment 15, 2016 be approved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
Madam Chairman, I would motion that text amendment 16, 2016 and text amendment 17, 2016 be held over till our March meeting. 13th meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
Thought I was done.
You just gonna stay up there for the next one. All right. Our last public hearing this evening is RZ 052017. Mr. Fincham.
Members of the board, your next public hearing tonight is RZ 05-2017, Leslie Heflin, owner, Par 5 Development Group, LLC, the applicant. They're requesting a rezoning from M1 industrial with no specified density to B1 business with no specified density on tax map 108-A-44, consisting of 1.79 acres of land. Property is located at 31361 Richmond Turnpike, approximately a third of a mile south of Route 30 in the Reedy Church voting district. The proposed use is business, specifically Dollar General. The 2030 comprehensive plan identifies this area as being located within the Dawn area plan designated as planned development. You have a copy of the application in your packet, as well as a copy of the GDP that has been submitted by the applicant for the site. They're requesting this rezoning to B1 to allow the construction of a Dollar General at the location. It was a former, for those of you familiar with the area, the old Gwaltney service station that was rezoned M1 several years ago for a proposed use that never located there. The use is consistent with the comprehensive plan for the area, and the construction of a Dollar General would address a number of goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan for the specifically for the Dawn community planning area. The Planning Commission did forward this application to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Fincham. Is there any questions at this time?
Madam Chair, if I could ask a question, Mr.
Thomas.
Fincham. Mr. Fincham, the map we have in our packet, I think I know where exactly this is, but I would like to make sure. What was the old Dawn convenience store? This is further south than that.
Yes, this is south. Yeah,
It's south. 301 runs north and south.
yeah, it's south of the Route 30 intersection on the east side.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's
You
south of what was the Dawn Convenience Center, or Dyson store, I think that was the name. It's south
yes,
of that.
Yes.
And it's across the street from what was, I guess, Mrs. Wilson's.
Yes, sir. That's
property.
correct. Yes, sir.
Just to make sure I understand exactly
Yes,
where
sir.
it is, and I guess all the folks that are there know exactly where it is, but I just want to make sure we all knew.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions before I open for comment? Hearing none at this time, we will open the floor to public comment, starting with the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, my name is Kerry Hutcherson. I'm the attorney for Par 5 Development Group, the applicant in this case. And I just want to introduce members of our team here. We've got civil engineer Tyson Catlett, traffic engineer Mike Bailey, and this is Zach Ivey here from Par 5 Development Group. He's going to get up and tell you a little bit more about Par 5, the developer, and Dollar General as the operator of the store in just a moment. And I just want to go over 3 main points about the application that I think are important to remember. One, in terms of fiscal benefit that this store will provide for the county. It's going to be a job creator. It's going to be both real estate and retail sales tax revenue generator for the county. It's going to be creating an opportunity for citizens to buy everyday items that they need for reasonable prices without having to travel outside of the county. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, as Mr. Fincham mentioned, and the Planning Commission recognized that when they recommended approval. Further, in the comprehensive plan, there's a citizen poll that's cited, and citizens of the Dawn Village area mentioned that the top weaknesses of their community were a lack of shopping and a lack of job opportunities, and so we're responding to those needs with this store proposal. And finally, in terms of addressing impacts, there's been a whole lot of work on the part of the applicant and the applicant's team with the county staff, VDOT staff, to make sure that the site design and the proffer conditions in this case minimize the impacts on the neighboring properties and the immediate neighborhood. And the fact that we're downzoning from an industrial district to a business district, by definition, is already going to be reducing the impacts to the adjacent neighborhood. I want to say, I know there's some citizens who are here tonight that are in support of this case, they expressed their opinion at the Planning Commission meeting, saying how much this store is needed in this area. And just to address a little bit of what we heard of the woman's comments before in terms of the current condition of the site, Par 5 is under contract to purchase that property, and the seller's assured us he's going to be cleaning up all of the equipment that's out there. And as purchasers of that property, you can be assured that we're not going to want to buy a property with a bunch of junk on it. So with all of that, I would respectfully request that you support this case and vote approval, and I'm going to yield the floor to Zach for a second so we can give you a quick presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Zach Ivey with Par 5 Development Group. We are a developer out of North Carolina. Year to date, we have developed and built over 100 Dollar Generals. We are excited to come to the county. Dollar General's really getting serious about the image that may have been portrayed by some of how they may get dirty or start getting trashy looking. There's stuff all in the aisles, whatnot. They have created a nationwide maintenance team to help deal with that. All you have to do is call Dollar General directly and ask for the maintenance manager, and they will come down, send a team down to look at those stores. We will be providing, because we are adjacent to residential properties, we will be providing a landscaper buffer, and we want to provide the community with what they need, and that's somewhere to shop. As Carrie said, the amount of benefits that come with bringing a Dollar General to the county just are substantial. 6 to 8 jobs. And Dollar General gives lots of money to a literary foundation that they created, as well as scholarships to local and nationwide students for college. A lot of those go unused and unclaimed, so it's something to pass along if you have a student that's about to enter college, to reach out and try to get those. So I'm here to answer any questions about us as a developer, about Dollar General, and as Carrie said, Tyson's here to answer any questions regarding the engineering or technical side, and then Mike Bailey's here to address any traffic concerns you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak on this issue, if you please come forward and state your name and your voting district. Hi.
Hi again. So, apologize about earlier. Again, I'm new to Virginia. I come from North Carolina. I purchased my property in Caroline County. But the county is lacking.
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch your name.
My name is Aimee Fogelman. The county is lacking a lot, but my concern is 301 south of 30. There's a lot of traffic, especially around the holidays, interstate backups. Adding more traffic is problematic for the residents that live right there next to that interchange. Also, as I stated before, with the loitering that's going on at the gas station south, there's a lot of questionable activity going on. So my concern would be, as a property owner adjacent to this property, where this potential development is going to be, is what's that going to do to me? Also, as stated before, there's a lot of tires in the woods. I don't think they're on the property that they're looking at purchasing. I think they're beyond, out in the woods, but that's where that gas station did a lot of dumping, and it needs cleaned up. And then the decrease in property value, for all of us there with the adjacent properties, that's a detriment to us. I do support development of the area. I just don't support the current location. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue?
Hello again, George Spinner, Mattapanai. As I stated before, Don is my community, and I very much support this store. It'll provide a convenience for many of the people in the area, as well as some travelers going up and down 301. For us in that community now, the closest Dollar General or Family Dollar is either here in Ashland, or Bowling Green, or you have to go down to Ashland, or you have to go all the way down 301 to just where 301 divides into 4 lanes by the new Hanover High School. That's the next closest Family Dollar General. So I think this would be a real asset to the area and provide people with not having to travel such a long distance to maybe just pick up a few items they might need here and there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this topic? Is there anyone else? Anyone who would like to speak on this topic? This public hearing is now closed. Discussion?
Quick question.
Mr. Thomas?
No, this is more for the applicant. Mr. Par 5?
Yes, sir.
Par 5 and 2 would be nice. The Jason said some things about, I guess, the existing condition of the facility. Are you aware of those?
Some of them have, we've done a lot of due diligence so far, and the existing condition of the site will be cleaned up. What is there now, maybe some of the trash from the gas station, we can't do anything about that, but everything on site that is, the building, the stuff that's inside, the stuff that's outside, the stuff that's in the woods behind them, all that will be cleaned up, and it is in our contract that the seller must have that cleaned up before we buy it. Yes, sir.
And you had discussions, I see a few members of the Don community in the audience. You had discussions with folks there, and you
Yes.
said the people here were in favor of your project?
Yeah, we've spoken to many of the community members that are here, and they are in support, and also have had some extensive talks with Gary Wilson, and he is in support as well, and knows that the community needs it.
Okay, we've been trying to get something in Dawn for quite some time, so I want to make sure that we finally got the right thing in the right location and everybody's happy. Ms. Fields? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Okay.
any questions for Mr. Fincham, the applicant?
Mr. Fincham, I saw a well pad site. Is this well and septic? Or is there a sewer line?
The Dawn sewer system is, line is right in front of this property. To the
Very large connection fee for this.
There's, and to the extension that if they have to replace their field, then they have to connect to the system. If they could use the existing drain field without any reconstruction, then they would be allowed to use that drain field. There is no public water at that location.
I don't know where they would put a drain field that doesn't have parking lot on top of it, but.
That would be difficult, yes, sir.
Mr. Seeley?
I guess I just had one question. You guys have looked at the site. I just drive by quickly. How much of the trash is actually, do you think, not actually on your site, but beyond those bounds? Anybody want to venture a guess? Come on, Zach, you can guess. You've been there.
What I'll say is, so our company's divided into 3 different departments. We have a land acquisition team, a development team, and then a construction team. The land acquisition guys have had more extensive, I guess, research on the actual property and feet on the ground. To my knowledge, I think a lot of the trash that was spoken about earlier is beyond our property. It's just what was there, what was supposed to be there at the time. That's kind of what our property is, because our property line does not go, it doesn't extend too far into the woods behind where the existing building is. So in my opinion, I think most of the trash is beyond our property line.
We can send our well-staffed property maintenance department down to check it out.
That was going to be my suggestion.
That was going to be my suggestion also.
Is can we look at this? Because if we're going to make this, when this improvement gets made, there's no point in not holding everybody's feet to the fire, because we are going to change the general look of that entire area, and everybody needs to be aware that that's going to be expected.
Yes, we'll have somebody out within the next week to survey the area and see what's off-site and start that process.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Just happened.
Oh, okay. Do I have a motion or further discussion?
I need Mr. Whiteman to answer a question, and I think he's engaged at the moment.
All right. Mr. Whiteman?
He's doing the right thing.
Okay.
On another note, Par 5, you develop golf courses, or is that just a Par 5 name that you like?
So the 2 owners that have bought the business or created the business, Par 5 Development Group, they were both superintendents at golf courses. So one of them, Brian Clodfelter, was a superintendent at Pinehurst number 4, and another one, Lee Pittman, was a superintendent at Pinewild. So they decided to keep the name golf-related because they were in the golf industry for so long, and it meant something to them, so they wanted to kind of play that into our name a little, and that's why they named it that.
Thank you, sir.
And my wife does work at Pinehurst, so
Number two.
if you need her around. She's in the finance department, so I might be able to hook you up.
Can we cut this part out of the tape?
We are just joking.
I didn't hear
I have already done my statement of economic interest, but I'll be happy to do another one. Mr. Whiteman?
Yes, sir.
Was the answer yes or no?
No,
To my question, the answer was no?
I just texted.
Why was that? Mrs. Fields, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mrs. Fields? I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure now the public hearing is closed. You could stand back on the mic so you could talk again. But the public hearing was closed. You can't hear me? Now that's rare. I just wanted to ask you, and I know this is not what we normally do, but you have been in the Dawn area for quite some time. I wanted to ask you how you felt about this project and if there was anything they needed to do to make sure the project was a good project. And if there was anything they could do to make it a good project. You can't think of anything right now? Okay. About the Dollar General itself. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Traffic concerns, gentlemen?
My name is Michael Bailey. I'm with Ramey Kemp and Associates. I did the transportation study. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Traffic impacts?
Yes, a traffic impact assessment for TIA was done. It was reviewed by county staff and VDOT. As far as trip production, I think that is more the concern. We study the AM, which is kind of the morning rush hour, peak hour, and the PM. It's between 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. That's standard methodology. In the morning, the site will only be producing 19 trips, 11 of which will be entering the site, 8 of which are projected to exit. And in the PM, 22 entering with 20 exiting for a total of 42. It just doesn't generate that much in the way of traffic, to be honest with you.
I'm Ada Terrell from Dawn, and I've been there all my life. And I will approve that you all will let the dollar store come in Dawn, because we have to go to Ashland, the Bowling Green, and the Common Church, for little things that we need. And if we get the dollar store, we don't have to go that far. And for elder people, it'd be nice for them to have. Thank you.
Ms. Addie, you didn't tell us your name.
Addie Terrell.
Thank you. All right.
All right, this can't be part of the.
Well, I was going to say, Mr. Underwood asked to expedite this hearing because I think he thought it was important to move this forward. And I know that he's not here this evening, but I'm going to make a motion that we approve RZ 05-2017, Heflin Leslie, owner, Par 5 Development Group, LLC applicant.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
We're not doing the total, are we? Okay.
All right, that's the end of our public hearings for tonight. That takes us to unfinished business. Number 7, discussion of the possible creation of a towing advisory board. I guess Mr. Partners, is
No, I've got
who
it.
is this? You got it.
I've
All right.
It's basically with the memo we put in the packet. We did finally receive our final postcard, so it ended up at 6-4 opposing the creation of a tow board. Mr. Pardon and I did meet with the First Sergeant Bodkin with the State Police and Sheriff Lippa, and Sheriff Lippa's here, can certainly add to this if he needs to, but they agreed that they would create one line, the old line. The State Police moved the line, so the State Police agreed they would work back to and grandfather in Poplar in and let them continue to work on the interstate, given the fact that they have a closer response, and moving that line would disadvantage that business. I think that basically fixes most of the issues with the State Police and the Sheriff working together to work off the same line, basically the same list, and to continue to look at other towing issues. And I think the biggest takeaway is both the State Police and the Sheriff agreed to hand out a card, unfortunately with my name on it, unless I can delegate that down to somebody else. But anyway, and we will create a database, basically, or spreadsheet of. So if we get a complaint, we'll give it to the State Police or the Sheriff, but we'll also log it. So maybe over a year, we'll be able to determine if we've seen any problems with towers or some things that we need to bring back to the board. But at least you'd have a record if there's complaints going on. Everybody, if it's a police tow, one way or the other, they'll give out a card with, if you have any problems with this tow, please contact. And it won't be having to contact the State Police or the Sheriff, it'll be me, county government. And I think that's a very workable solution.
We don't need a motion, do we?
No, I saw lights. Is there discussion?
No, I agree with that, in particular the part where we're grandfathering in Poplar in, because if we didn't, we'd basically kill their business. So, okay, thank you.
And
Very
I
good.
like the fact that we're changing the zone so that we're giving a card that's not got the sheriff's or the tower's number on it for a neutral party, and I'm sorry that's you, but that's okay. You can always pass it on down the line, that's right. So, all right, no further discussion? All right, let's move on then to 2.8. This is concerning the transit Fred bus system. We got the handouts on that last month. The reason I asked this to be put back on the agenda is if we are going to make a change, they need time on their side to do the public hearings and get the things changed to fit our schedule also. So I asked that we move forward on this. Mr. Parton.
That's the gist of the issue, Madam Chair. We did, and I regret we didn't have it in the last meeting, but we do have the information that Fred provided regarding the marketing efforts. That they have done some extensive marketing efforts since October that are in your board packet, and that has resulted in a bit of an uptick in ridership in the last 2 quarters of 2017 compared to the previous year. But as Madam Chair said, the reason that it's back on tonight, rather than be part of the budget process, is if you are going to consider changes, you do need to move forward with them soon so that they can advertise the public hearing.
There was also some discussion, Mr. Parton, about the transportation group being, they really want to see these systems work, and that there was a possibility, if it was a financial burden, that maybe we could apply for assistance next year's budget? Was there some?
There were some possibilities mentioned at the last CAO meeting that there may be some grant funds, but it wouldn't. We'd have to apply, and it wouldn't wouldn't affect us in this upcoming budget. So there may be some assistance there. It also, there are other forms of transportation money sometimes that go to these bus commuter type things, and so there's another of having that. It's a positive for us. I mean, it would be staff's recommendation that we move to the C3 route that they proposed and take it from this building through Bowling Green down 207 to Carmel Church and then back up Route 1 only as far, and I get this place wrong all the time, but not Fred Central, but lower, south of that. What is the right?
Spotsy Regional?
Lee's Hill.
Lee's Hill. I never call it the right place. There you can transfer to wherever you need to go on the rest of the Fred system, but we wouldn't be paying to take a bus all the way into basically to Mary Washington where Fred Central is. So I would think that to see whether we can make this work with a more streamlined route that runs on a standard time, doesn't have a hole in the middle of the day, and maybe provides those type of funds, that would be the thing. And there is a real push from the state to provide funds for the interconnect and that type of thing back over to VRE. So it may be something that, having that will ultimately allow us to tap into this commuter money, which will then support the bus route over here from Bowling Green because it's tied into that. So if we leave that piece out, then it's going to be hard to get the state money. So we need to leave that VRE piece in the route. So that would be our recommendation for a year and see what the numbers do and see if it improves any or if we can find some basically federal dollars passed through to the state for commuter.
So this would only, that was my question, is this a one-year option, then it's not a 5-year contract?
They don't have to purchase they don't have to purchase an additional bus at this time to just do it at the base level. So if you wanted to shorten the interval between the bus, to have more buses available to go to VRE and all those things, then we'd have to buy another bus, and I imagine they'd want us to sign on for longer. But I think we could work out, to see whether this is working and do it for a year. Wouldn't require a contract.
We're going to end up spending another $22,000 because we're going from 100 or $23,000, we're going from 102 to 125.
I think we can lower that. That number was all the way in, I think, for all the way into Fred Central.
Well,
I think it would be less than that.
This is my concern, and I'll be honest with you. My concern is last year we looked at this and we said we'd give it a year. And we've given it a year. They come to us with options that are more expensive. I mean, we're not happy with spending the money that we are now. Now they come to us with options that are even more expensive. And now we're going to turn around and say we're going to give it another year. When there's very few people riding it as it is. I mean, this past year, Mr. Whiteman and I wrote it during the summer. It was, 20 minutes late, 30 minutes late? We're showing up. So if you need it for a particular time, how can you even rely on it?
Well, the only thing I would add
and most of the people were going inter-Caroline. They weren't even going up to Fredericksburg. So now we're going to spend another we're going to spend another $100,000, $120,000 on a system that doesn't seem to be working.
That's what they looked at with that hole in the middle of the day is part of the reason for the ridership. So that's why the change, that's actually a little more expensive. But I think we can get that number down by not going all the way to Fred Central.
The individual that wants to go beyond Fred Central would have to pay a different transfer, but it's not on our part of this funding.
It's my understanding we're changing the route. We're not extending anything. We're trying a new route system, correct?
Yes, we're eliminating a route that goes up Route 2, and we're only going to have one route. The extension would be we'd be going over to VRE on 17 and back, but we wouldn't be going as far north because currently the route that's in Ladysmith goes all the way to the bus central.
They don't need that.
And so this would be south of that. But that would, if you want it, they felt in looking at it that would have a chance to have more riders because it would be a better service. And so you can certainly do away with it if you want, but that was the recommendation from a consultant that looked at it. The reason the ridership may be as bad as it is because you've got two buses and then all of this delay in between time of almost 4 hours. So if you went anywhere, you were stuck because there was no return route.
But when does our contract with them run out?
June 30th this year.
So we've got the contract anyhow until June, so if they advertise it, do we have a month or two to see if that helps the ridership?
I think if they advertise it, they would barely get started before it would be over. I don't know that they would want to change that if you weren't committing to the next year. That would be a question
Because
for
we haven't
Fred.
even gotten into budget, talking about budget yet, so.
They do it on, I would it's going to be on a year. So if you don't want to do it for all the way till this June 30th of 19, they're probably not going to want to commit on their end.
I'm open to trying something I would have hoped to have gotten this 4 months ago. To give it more time, I'm leaning towards giving it. I know I said I wanted to see ridership improve, or I'll support killing it, and I'm still there. But they seem to believe this will improve ridership, which is the ultimate goal. The numbers for the last quarter support that, but again, disappointed that it's now and not 4 or 5 months ago.
And although I have my concerns, I think if we try this and it doesn't increase, then we have gotten 2 years of advertising and pushing it. And if we get a change of schedule and if it doesn't work, then obviously it's not going to work in Caroline. Now they've done the study. And I would give them another year and see if they do it. Mr. Thomas, any comment?
That's fine. Again, like I said, that Fred needs to do a lot of marketing and make sure they're working on it. They said they were doing marketing and it increased, so this is their last shot.
I agree.
I mean, ideally, we do the announcement, public hearing, and if they'll let us go for 6 months extension to see if this works, that would be my preferred path to take. But if it's,
I would
that's what
support
I would
that
like
to see if they would give us a 6 month extension to try it. You'll ask them. Do we need a motion? Make a motion for 6 months. No, I don't think they had enough time. I don't think because they had talked to Alan. They're not here.
Can we ask them for 6 months, but
From the
I just
time
need
the
to-
change is effective.
But if they're not willing to do that and they have to go a full year, we need clarity on what the board's action is.
Can we cross that? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. How about that?
Okay, fair enough.
If y'all are okay with that statement.
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we pursue the alternative budget neutral route to proceed for the public hearing and change the route as soon as possible. And then to extend this contract 6 months
From the rail change.
from its proposed ending to give time for the changes to bear fruit.
Do I have a second? Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote no on this, and we said we were gonna give them a year, and the year is basically up, and 15. Where we saw some uptick in some numbers, but overall it's down. The overall numbers are down, and we keep on throwing. I mean, I just think we're throwing money away here. I got to be honest with you. So that's why I'm voting no.
Any other discussion? Then all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Roll call. Mr.
Aye.
Thomas? Mr. Black?
Nay.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
Mr. Forehand? Aye. I vote aye. takes us to nine. Thank you.
I got
I'm
you.
sorry for my buddies down here sitting so long. We'll move faster.
Madam Chair, members of the board, your next item on the agenda, agenda item number 9, is the discussion of proposed amendments to Chapter 108 of the Code of Caroline County, which is vehicles and traffic. As the board is aware, we have been dealing with the parking issues of commercial and tractor trailers and trucks in Belmont for on again, off again for probably 2 years. We received a requested amendment from the Property Owners Association at Belmont, which we looked at and discussed with the Commonwealth Attorney and the Sheriff. In a nutshell, our ability to regulate traffic or to regulate parking in residential areas is very limited under the state code. And the amendment that was proposed by the Homeowners Association, we actually don't have the authority to do that under the state code. There's a citation in the state code that would allow us to do that, but it requires specific enabling legislation from the General Assembly. So we'd have to go to General Assembly next year and ask to be included in the list of localities to regulate the parking in the manner that was requested. In researching the state code, there really only appears to be one option available to the county that does not fully address their issues, and it would be a traffic enforcement issue versus a parking citation issue. There's a section of the state code, 462-1304, which allows local regulations of trucks and buses. Specifically, the provision states that a locality or a governing body by ordinance may prohibit the use of trucks except for the purpose of receiving loads or making deliveries on certain designated streets under their jurisdiction. That appears to be the only provision in the state code that might afford the residents of Belmont some potential relief that they are seeking, absent going to the General Assembly and requesting the authority for a more expansive parking enforcement options. That's kind of where we're at. We can draft an ordinance related to the use of the roads by trucks, and if that's the board's desire, and go to the General Assembly next year, if that's the board's desire.
Discussion?
But it sounds like that's what you're recommending, Mr. Fincham, is a two-pronged approach as we do this.
That's really the only option we have at this time, Mr. Thomas, unless, really that's the only option that I think we have.
And it really, in the county, only affects Belmont and I think some parts of Ladysmith Village, but they don't have the problem at this time. So, and you've listed up the roads here that would be Belmont Boulevard, Triple Crown, and so forth. So
Yes, sir.
I would, if there's this is only one particular subdivision in the county, doesn't affect anybody else, I would ask that we follow Mr. Fincham's recommendation and go with this first parking violation issue and then petition the General Assembly.
I guess I have a couple questions. Now, I'm just curious. The sheriff had a suggested changes below. I was in our board packet. But my first question is, how many violations will be to homeowners that live in there, that it's their trucks? Do we know? Are we going to be writing tickets to the homeowners?
Potentially, yes. You would be writing tickets to whomever drives a truck, and I mean, it's really an enforcement issue, and the sheriff should probably address that. But potentially, any truck who's not within that subdivision for purposes of delivery or receiving would be in violation of that section if adopted.
I guess then to follow that up is, are we looking at the sheriff's suggested changes below, or are we looking at, because there's two ordinances in here.
Yeah, the sheriff's, and I'll let the sheriff speak. I think his changes were to the language that was requested by the HOA, and I think we all agree that we really don't have the authority to do that. But I'll let the sheriff.
Yeah, because I'm curious, I don't know where I'm going with this, because I have two things and I'm hearing something different. So I'm just curious where we're, Sheriff, can you, because I don't understand what we're doing.
Put this a little bit, yes, I brought that too. You know, as we started off with all of the parking, as we said at the very beginning, it's very complex in there. The ordinance that Mr. Fincham has given to you is to us not, I should say it's not by code unless you all develop this to be an ordinance, okay? If you choose to make it an ordinance for us to take care of the parking, then my suggestions were that in the red. And what I suggested was to move the section B that was below. There was an A, if you guys have it in your packet, 108.22 on the prohibition of parking, if that's what you want to deal with. And A tells you no person shall park any motor vehicle, etc. I think in the original one that came out to you guys did not have a B. The B was down in 108.23. which I felt needed to be moved up, Mr. Seeley. So that's what I said should be up there. So if we're going to do an ordinance, it would be better placed there. And I scratched through, it shall be the duty of. I scratched through to say the Caroline County Sheriff is authorized to. So you see that in the red. Mm-hmm. So with all of this as it is, this to me, in this document, is if you all choose as a board to create an ordinance. The other one that Mr. Mahoney and I both felt like would involve the General Assembly under 46.2-1222.1. And that's the one of regulation of prohibition of parking of certain vehicles in certain counties and towns. And there it lists Alexandria, Fairfax, Hanover. So if we added Caroline, then that will speak for itself under that code section. When we start getting into the 1300s, that gets to the power and authority of you all. Okay? And, pardon me? Yes.
You said 12?
46.2-1222.1.
That's the one that would go to the General Assembly.
Correct. And if we went to them and said, we want to add Caroline to that, and then it spells out everything that Belmont has been asking for. See, Hanover just recently did that. So as I'm checking around with all the other jurisdictions and who does that, and I even spoke, well, I'll leave that conversation for something else. But what you see as far as in our proposed amendment, if we end up going to a General Assembly, I think the citations would be perfect and for us to follow through with that. That helps.
Now, and going to the General Assembly is a requirement of the Dillon Rule, but that is actually the best solution long-term. But as Mr. Fincham's initial ordinance would handle the situation right now, because it is a safety concern, but going to the General Assembly, we couldn't get anything done until July 2019. So we would have another year and a half wait again almost. So if we do a two-step process, something now, and then go to the General Assembly next year, we'd at least alleviate the danger and issues in the little kids and trucks, which has been the problem the whole time. So if there's no more questions for Mr. Fincham, I would recommend that we,
just meant.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What, just exactly, can you spell for me what can be done now?
Well, when you look at the sections that we have, is what we said all along. If it dealt with them illegally parking within 15 feet of a street corner, if it's there for a fire, and we've already put signs up, but not for the whole area. Where those signs have been placed up is dealing with the Belmont community. And I've also received calls saying they want that whole street, that's Omaha, if I'm not mistaken. They want Omaha to be completely no parking whatsoever. Now, the no parking that we did put up with VDOT was for any vehicle, so we didn't single out trucks. No vehicles are to park there. So, and because
that was
we
more
felt
of a curb, that was more of an issue, curb and
well, that's
and
your
line
safety.
of sight and
That
things.
is your
That was
safety
well
issue.
safety, right.
That's what that is. Now, these other roads, as far as whether there's a safety issue or not, I can't tell you because we haven't had any accidents, we haven't had any problems other than the Belmont community saying they don't want tractor trailers parked there, and they could cause a traffic hazard. I understand that. So whether you decide to adopt an ordinance is up to you. We just don't, we can't do what Belmont per se wanted because we didn't have the code section. There were two different code sections trying to create a hybrid.
They wanted a much more restrictive ordinance than we had the authority to do, but we could do it in a two-step process as create this ordinance now, which would, alleviate the safety concerns, and then go through the General Assembly like Hanover just did and make it a lot better, especially when it starts to apply to Ladysmith Village. And I know some places they can't get into Lake Landor theoretically, but if they could, the trucks could park there because it's a public road.
Now, here's your difference, and I got to
Or
point
on
this
public
out.
roads.
This is only talking a citation.
Right.
This is saying that if that vehicle's a problem, we just put a citation on it and we put it up there.
Right.
That's all that we do. That means we don't tow it, because
Right.
you're not putting that in here.
Right.
So there's no fine or anything.
Well, the fine would have to go, and that's going to create the full cooperation from our treasurer, from our general district court, and then if they don't pay the citations or fines, it could involve the commissioner of revenue who deals with DMV. So that's what you would have if you deal with that now. So,
Do we have any idea how many of these tickets we're going to write a month?
I do not, because again, it's different. A Virginia uniform summons is totally different than a citation. The citation would have to be created, and Fredericksburg has a very good one. So I've already talked with our general district court. If you choose to do this, we're going to have to go through ordering that, being able to, again, enforce that by giving the tickets, because we can't sit out there for 2 hours, or if somebody calls for them to be in there. The code section that Mr. Fincham's talking about, as far as that's concerned, would be to restrict trucks from being in there, meaning driving, not the fact that they're parked. So it doesn't affect, like I said, it's not going to address your parking issue if you go to the one under 1304. And I'm not trying to make this, I'm sorry it's not clear as mud, so.
Now, but the reality is we have a process that can address the issues, can address the safety concerns. It's a two-step process. We go ahead and make the ordinance now as suggested, then follow up with your suggestions and go to General Assembly.
I've told you if the board wants to do it, I've got citations, and we're there when we get a call. We can scratch it out, put it on there, and then it's going to have to go through the county with the treasurer, and if they wish to, you saw my changes in red. I wanted to make sure you all saw that.
Yes, they were in here. So, Madam Chair, if there's no more questions after Mr. Forehand.
What's the advantage of the 1222.1 versus the 1222?
Well, that right there puts it specifically of everything that you want. When you get up here and you look at it, and it talks about gross vehicle weight ratings of 12,000, different than that of a regular truck. A truck is 7,501. This is going up to where they'll allow that if they have more than 12,000. So your pickup panel trucks aren't included in that one, which could be included in your one that you're doing.
So a Chevy 2500 parked in the road is going to be covered by this?
If we now you're getting me confused. If we do the one that you all want to do, it only said yeah, that's going to say that could be affected by this.
Which one do we want to do, the 1222?
The 1222.1 is what we're suggesting.
I'm
and
talking
would
about
recommend.
what we're enacting right now. A Chevy 2500 parked on the road, does that get a citation?
It could, because it doesn't say anything other than the fact that you're talking about a truck under the definitions of 46.2-100.
Okay. Okay. As long as, because I don't want that phone call.
Gentlemen, remember, we still have to have a public hearing.
Yes. Move for a public hearing.
Thank you. That's what we're going to do, is to take Mr. Fincham's first ordinance, move forward to a public hearing, or I guess first reading.
First reading, and then a public hearing.
And then a public hearing. And there is an election next year. I was thinking maybe we could at least inform our delegates, or this is what we would like to do in the future, but they may or may not be there because there's an election next year. So, okay, so move to first reading.
Now, is that going to include mine with the red or no?
Yes, sir. Of course.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
They just had election in the fall. There's no election this year. It's
Yeah,
off
you're
year.
right. So,
So
all
we
right,
can,
so
we can
can
ask the,
we
all
can
y'all-
ask right now
we need to,
to put it in for next
yeah,
year.
we'll put it on the agenda sometime, because they're in session now. We'll get it on so that they can.
Next year, but yeah. Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. Thank you, board member.
Yes. Thank you. Gentlemen, if no one has any objection, and if it doesn't affect anybody, I have been looking at friendly faces from Upper Caroline sitting down here since we began our meeting, and I was wondering, could we move 11 up now so that they can get on home? Do you have any problem with that?
It's a
Is that all
memorandum
right?
of understanding. Can we just say yes and go on?
Yeah, there's financial.
Yeah,
things, so.
it's paid people, but, well, he comes at the end of the meeting all the time.
It's working out.
Yes, we're going to do it. How much does it cost?
It's in your packet.
Yes.
Madam Chair, do you want me to go on, or?
Go right ahead, please.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. Before you tonight, we have a proposal from the Upper Caroline Volunteer Fire Department to provide them daytime staffing at 80% cost on them. Upper Caroline, over the last few years, has had difficulty getting daytime volunteers, as many of our stations do. They do have a large endowment, which they want to use to kind of protect the community by putting career staff in their station during the daytime hours. The daytime hours would be Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And with that schedule, we've used that schedule last year at Ladysmith and Bowling Green. Upper Caroline would pay for those two people 48 hours each during the week. The county would pick up the last day, and we'll call it Friday, if you will, for two employees or two part-time employees to fill that slot in those 12-hour periods. So the county obligation to this agreement would be somewhere between $34,000 a year and $36,000. Upper Caroline's obligation would be somewhere between $139,000 and a little bit higher than that in your packet. The range, the reason why we have a range, it all depends on who we hire and where they fall in our pay scale, if they're ALS, if they're BLS, et cetera. So that's why we do have a range. Each year that cost would be calculated, and then it would be direct billed in two bills to Upper Caroline, and payments would be made to the county to cover those costs. They're proposing an agreement for up to 5 years, the first year, and then 4 continuous years after that. At any point, any one of us could cancel that agreement for staffing.
Madam Chairman, I move we move forward with this proposal and the memorandum of understanding. Great job by the chief. Is there a second?
I will second that. I want to thank Upper Caroline for actually being willing to do this, because I think it helps everybody in the county, including the Woodford area. So I'd like to thank them for actually looking at your funds and saying you could afford to do this.
And,
guys want to come up and say
and
something about any?
I'm gonna, before I call the vote, I'm gonna say this also. I've been
You don't have to,
talking
Steve, if you don't
to
want
Mr. Parrish
You don't have to.
and Kenny and, about this, and it just was so wonderful to know that they said, we have these funds because we worked for them and we want to serve our community, and that's what we were for. And it was just so enlightening to see that true volunteer service heart there. And it is with great pleasure that I call for a vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. James. Chief
All in-
Parrish.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Great
Thank
job,
you
Chief.
so much for everything, guys.
One question does remain, and that would be
Yes.
the implementation date, because this will affect a small amount of funding. Is it the board's desire to do that as quickly as possible, or at July 1 as we move into the new fiscal year?
I would defer to their organization, and
Yeah,
I think
how
we
do
can
they-
support it.
How
And is
fast
this
do you wanna
something that
move forward with it?
we've already approved?
Yeah, Mr. Cully would like to do July 1 would be easier financially, probably for everybody's bookkeeping, don't you think?
They said as soon as possible, or as soon as practical. We're going to have to advertise and hire. We are struggling right now to maintain staffing, so it's going to take us a while to get some positions in there.
So if it started in April, it would only be another $10,000 that's a quarter. If that. No, that's a third, it'd be $9,000.
Well,
Their funds.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and start interviewing,
They want to do right away.
and we'll get it going as soon as we can.
all right, we'll start it as soon as practical. How's that?
How about that?
Okay.
That
Chief,
sounds
thank you.
great.
Chief, this
Sir.
would be, they would be dual service. If they get an EMS call, they take the ambulance, they get a fire call,
Yeah,
they take the fire.
the real benefit to our system is during the daytime, we would have another ambulance in the system because there'd be two people there. Also, we'd have the ability to get out a tanker during the day, so if we had
You'd
a
have
fire.
A staff tanker is a wonderful thing.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. All right, number 10, please.
Can I make a motion, we accept the expedited hearing for Accuracy International Special
Second.
Exception?
Second.
I have a motion and
Aye.
a second. Do
I would like to add one thing. I would like to make sure that the planning commission is aware that time is of the essence with this, and that,
Call your member.
that they
Call your member.
do their, whatever visits they need, or they do that in advance and not wait to delay this any further.
Call your member.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. That was easier than I thought it was going to be. 12.
Madam Chair, I just have one question, because I don't think anybody's got a problem with Habitat having an office. Can they use the front door so that we have, to me, the woman that sits up front there for Caroline's Promise is there by herself, and I think the additional traffic through the door would make it look like there are two people there. And to me, it would provide a real safety net, which I think we lack there.
I asked the same thing before the meeting to see what the structure of the building was, if those rooms were connected. Are they connected?
They are connected. The front door would just, I think, would give real protection to the lady that sits up front. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve Habitat for Humanity to use the Caroline County office space.
Wait a minute.
We found out from Ben after we put this on the agenda that, believe it or not, you've got to do a lease and have a public hearing. I know, for one room. But anyway, as long as everybody's in favor, we'll schedule that. And,
Schedule it.
And they can move forward knowing that it's a formality to write a lease, and we'll get that worked out. But, because we really want him to be able to apply for the grant, and you bring that money to Caroline. So we'll work that out. But evidently, it's government space. I thought one room we'd be all right, but anyway, we'll work on the lease.
All right. Yes,
Madam
lease
Chair.
with Caroline
Madam Chair.
Promise. Yes,
If I
sir.
could for just a second, I just would like to take a moment. Mr. Tickle from Habitat is out there. He has been, you can come on down, it's okay.
You're the next contestant, and the price is right.
I just wanted to say, he in the last few, when did you take over? When did you take over?
It was officially, I went on staff a year ago, well, actually July 1st, but I was volunteering for about 5 months prior to try to get some of the administrative stuff going.
Yeah, and he has, in the 5 months or so that he's been, I mean, since he's been here, it's been incredible. I mean, he added a lot of energy to the plunge. He had an event at the Timbers, was this past week. Hopefully you did very well.
We raised $1,000.
Yes, very good. So excellent job. So I raised a lot of money for the cause there. So he's very energetic, trying to recruit people. He's got a Facebook page, which I think you have several thousand or over 1,000 people that are following it. So I think he's going to be a huge asset here to Caroline. So thank you for everything you've done so far.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
One of the big things really that we need the office for is we've been asked to administer a large grant for not just Caroline, but for the whole planning district. It's the EHARP grant, Emergency Home Repair and Accessibility Program. Last year, of course, the budgets are still being discussed, but it was about $250,000. So residents would have to go up to Stafford, a lot of times to apply for this. So this would be a great thing for the county. Plus the USDA loans that we use, they're pretty complicated. They're 29 pages. A lot of the clients we work with just get intimidated when I give them that. So having an office would allow us to really spend the time to get the funds to do the repairs in particular. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I guess what you need is motion to go to public hearing for a lease.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? So moved. All right, capital project update.
We included that in your packet. If you have any questions on the numbers. The one thing we do want to discuss with you is the possibility of having a work session for the update on the Rappahannock River intake with permit process at the March 13th at 4:30. We really need to schedule a work session with those folks to give you an update of where we are and what's going on with that.
When are we meeting with the schools again?
That's not set. When would you like to meet with the schools again?
Don't we have to do it at budget time anyhow?
Yeah, you've had one. That's up to you.
Got to be the next month or two. After your proposed budget comes out, so. 27th, we meet again in. No, so March is, we'd only meet once. Yeah, that's right. Yes, right, you got it. Do we want to have the problem is with those ones before the board meetings, we don't have enough time. I think we kind of need.
You want to do the 20th?
I don't know what my travel schedule for next month is yet. It's ramping up, so I'll have to, we can
March the
pick a
20th
date.
is fine. March the 20th is fine.
Will that give you all enough time to look at the budget? Gives us a week?
We're gonna, all we did is we get Mr. Cully's number, and then we discuss with the school board.
Right.
So that should be plenty of time.
All right, he'll check with them and we can confirm that, but so to keep that as a start date.
But we're going to adjourn to March 13th, 2018, 4 o'clock in the EOC,
Yes.
4:30.
4:30.
Are we ready for that, or? No, we're not quite there yet, I don't think, are we? Right.
I just wanted to make sure we got that.
Okay.
Anyone have any closing board comments? We covered a lot tonight. Mr. Black?
Yeah, just a reminder, I have 2 constituent meetings coming up. It's Tuesday the 27th out at Rehoboth United Methodist Church, 7 o'clock. And then Thursday the 1st of March will be 7 o'clock in the Lake Landor Clubhouse inside Lake Landor. Thank you.
I have none.
Mr. Forehand?
February 27th, constituent meeting at Lake Caroline Clubhouse at 7 p.m. Also, Sheriff, is it possible to get the MOU between you and the schools regarding resource officers? That's fine, whatever.
Did I hear you correctly? You would like the MOU agreement between us and the schools?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
We want to consider the request for the resource officer. We just want to see what agreements are already in place. So.
Thank
do
you.
that.
Is the Ladysmith Fire banquet this
Yes.
Saturday?
17th.
17th.
Ladysmith Fire Rescue Banquet is the 17th of, I guess, this Saturday evening at Lake Caroline, and also at 7 p.m., if I remember correctly. Actually, I think it's 6.
I think it's 6.
Anything else? And I want to thank all the staff and everybody who showed up tonight. And now I will adjourn in a motion to continue this meeting until March the 13th at 4:30 for a work session update on the Rappahannock River withdrawal permit.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Thank you. Would somebody please make sure Mr. Underwood knows about that?